What would you sacrifice for freedom? As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a blood-red glow over the Aegean Sea, 300 ships stood poised at the brink of destiny, their hulls slicing through the waves like the resolve of men ready to confront tyranny. The air crackled with tension, charged with the whispers of warriors who had gathered not merely to fight, but to reclaim their very essence from the iron grip of an empire that sought to extinguish their flame. From the decks of the proud Athenian triremes, sailors and soldiers alike felt the pulse of history thrumming beneath their feet. Each man, clad in armor that bore the scars of countless skirmishes, gazed out at the horizon with a fierce determination mirrored in the eyes of their comrades. In the distance, the enemy loomed, a massive Persian fleet, a dark tide of ships, their sails unfurled like the wings of a monstrous bird descending to swallow them whole. The tension was palpable. Would valor triumph over overwhelming numbers? Heroes had risen and fallen before, but never had the stakes been so high. Every breath carried with it the weight of generations, the hopes of a city, and the cries of loved ones left behind. The battle was not merely for victory, it was a stand against oppression, a fight for the very soul of Greece. The oracle at Delphi had foretold this moment, the clash that would echo through time. Yet uncertainty lingered in the air. Would the strategists, led by the cunning Themistocles, outmaneuver the vast armada of Xerxes? A plan was in motion, intricate and fraught with peril. As the sun sank lower, shadows danced in the twilight, hinting at alliances forged in desperation and the betrayals that lay just beneath the surface. A lone seagull cried out, slicing through the silence like a warning. The men prepared themselves, hearts racing with the anticipation of chaos and clashing steel. Shouts of camaraderie mixed with the frantic sounds of oars being readied, each stroke a heartbeat in this monumental machine of war. This was not merely a battle, it was a crucible, a moment that would define the very fabric of their existence. As the first chilling notes of battle horns echoed across the water, a shiver ran through the ranks. Would they stand united, shoulder to shoulder, or would fear tear them apart in those crucial moments? The dark clouds of war gathered above, and the sea churned like a restless beast, as if sensing the impending clash of titans. Every man knew that this was the juncture where legends would be born or erased from memory. The stakes transcended life itself. It was a struggle that would ripple through history, a story to be told and retold. As the first ship surged forward, the tide of fate snapped, and the world held its breath, teetering on the edge of an eternal moment. Would freedom rise or fall beneath the weight of tyranny? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to unleash its fury in a tempest of blood and ambition. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the ancient city of Sardis, where the air was thick with tension and anticipation. Merchants shouted their wares, a backdrop of unknowing normalcy, while whispers of conflict danced through the streets like a cold wind. A storm was brewing, one that would forever alter the course of history. Two worlds were on a collision course: the proud independent city-states of Greece and the vast ambitious empire of Persia. In the bustling agora, an Athenian merchant named Lysander stood with a furrowed brow. His heart raced with the uncertainty of the times. Trade routes had grown perilous, their ships often returning with whispers of Persian ships patrolling the seas, asserting dominance. The grip of fear tightened around Lysander's chest as he thought of his son, who had recently joined the fledgling ranks of the Athenian army. With every echo of clashing swords in the distance, he felt the weight of a father's worry, a familiar ache that would soon resonate across the entire Greek landscape. As the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the sky into a canvas of fiery oranges and purples, a flicker of hope ignited within the hearts of the Greeks. The victory against the Persian forces at the Battle of Marathon was still fresh in their minds, a moment of unity and pride that whispered of endless possibilities. Yet, lurking behind this pride was the undeniable truth. The Persian Empire, with its vast resources and relentless ambition, was not a foe to be underestimated. The Persian king, Darius I, was a man driven by vengeance, his eyes set on Greece as a rebellious thorn in his side. He had tasted defeat, and that taste only stoked the flames of his fury. In the shadowy corners of Sardis, emissaries from the city-states gathered, their furtive glances revealing a shared anxiety. The news of revolts in the Ionian cities reached every corner of Greece like a wildfire. The cries for freedom from Persian control fueled a simmering fire, igniting the hearts of many. Rulers like the tyrant Hippias of Athens, who once sought refuge in Persia, now found themselves caught in the web of their own ambitions. Would they cling to power or unite against a common enemy? Each decision held the weight of destiny. With each passing day, the specter of war loomed larger. In the grand halls of Persepolis, Darius plotted with his generals, their voices low but fierce. the air thick with the scent of incense and determination. They were men of vast experience, hardened by previous battles and victories. "They have insulted us," Darius bellowed, his eyes blazing with the fire of rage. "They dare to defy the power of Persia? We will bury them under our might." The room erupted with fervent agreement, plans set into motion like clockwork. Persia would not rest until the Greeks were brought back to heel, humbled and silenced. Back in Athens, the atmosphere was electric. News of the Persian plans spread, igniting debates in the crowded theaters where citizens gathered to discuss their fate. A fiery orator named Themistocles stood before them, his voice carrying over the masses. "Brothers, our freedom hangs by a thread. We must prepare for war, strengthen our navy, and show Darius that we are not mere pawns in his game." His words shot through the crowd, piercing their hearts and minds like arrows. The people were hungry for action, their spirits alight with the resolve to fight for their homeland. Meanwhile, the winds carried tales of rebellion from the Ionian cities. The cries of the Ionian Greeks, yearning for liberation, echoed through the halls of power in Athens and Sparta, igniting a shared purpose. The sacrifices made by those brave souls stirred something deep within. They fueled a collective rage that no longer felt contained. If these cities fell, what hope would remain for the rest? The fear of Persian dominance crept closer, a looming shadow over their precious democracy. As autumn approached, the air turned crisp, and the tension became palpable. Farmers toiled tirelessly in the fields, filling their baskets with the last of the harvest, unaware that their crops could serve a far greater purpose. A whisper of war was on everyone's lips, and with each passing day, it grew louder, drowning out the mundane rhythms of life. In the fields of Marathon, the earth itself seemed to pulse with the energy of what was to come. Each footfall left a mark that would resonate through history, a testament to the unity forged in the fires of conflict. Did the Greeks feel invincible after their victory at Marathon? Perhaps, but the reality of their vulnerability also loomed large. The Persian war machine was relentless, a force of nature, and Darius was no mere king. He was a conqueror. As the first frost kissed the ground, the world held its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. Each heart beat in time with the march of soldiers, an impending collision that would echo through the ages. And so, as the days grew shorter and the nights darker, the stage was set for a monumental confrontation. The air crackled with the unease of what was to come. Fate, like a seamstress, stitched together the threads of the past and present, weaving a tapestry that would forever define nations. In the hearts of the Greeks, a fire burned bright, while in the depths of the Persian court, a tempest brewed, both sides unaware that they stood on the precipice of an epic saga that would ripple through time. Eyes turned toward the horizon, where shadows of ships could be seen gathering, and the echo of war drums began to resonate. The first notes of a symphony of conflict, a prelude to the epic clash between two worlds, reverberated in the hearts of those poised to fight. The story was far from over. It was at its most intense, the air thick with promise and dread. The winds of war swept across the landscape, and the only certainty was that the world would never be the same again. The chess pieces were set, the players ready, and the stage illuminated by the fiery dance of an impending storm. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape of ancient Persia. A lone figure stood atop a hill, his silhouette stark against the fading light. It was Cyrus, a king whose name would echo through the ages. His piercing gaze surveyed the vast territories that lay before him, waiting to be united under one banner. The air crackled with anticipation, for this was not just a man, but a force destined to change the course of history. Cyrus was born into a world of strife and division, where tribes clashed and kingdoms fell. But something within him burned brighter than the flickering flames of conflict. He envisioned a realm where people lived in harmony, free from tyranny and oppression. As he gathered his army, the whispers of his intent spread like wildfire. Each soldier was driven not just by loyalty, but by a shared dream of a better future. Under his command, they would march toward the heart of Babylon, where the mighty walls loomed, taunting them like a challenge waiting to be conquered. The siege of Babylon was no mere battle. It was a turning point. Night after night, Cyrus and his men camped outside the city, their spirits both high and heavy with the weight of destiny. Stories of Babylon's grandeur filled the air, its hanging gardens, its majestic ziggurats, wonders that had captured the imaginations of men far and wide. As the stars twinkled above, Cyrus would rally his troops, his voice rising above the din of fears and doubts. "We fight not just for land, but for the promise of a new beginning," he would say. igniting a fire in their hearts. When the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the assault began. The clash of swords rang out like thunder, echoing through the narrow streets of Babylon. Cyrus, at the forefront, fought with a fury that seemed to channel the very spirit of the land. The defenders, though fierce, could not withstand the tide of resolve pouring through the gates. As the sun climbed higher, the walls crumbled, and the gates swung open to the cheers of Cyrus's men. It was a moment woven into the fabric of time. Babylon fell, but with it, something beautiful was born. Cyrus didn't just conquer, he liberated. He walked the streets of the city, not as a tyrant, but as a liberator. With a gentle hand, he restored temples and freed slaves, declaring that all would worship their gods freely. As people emerged from their hiding places, tears of joy streamed down their faces. In that moment, Cyrus became not just a king, but a beacon of hope. Yet, the rise of the Persian Empire was not without its shadows. As Cyrus expanded his territories, he faced challenges that tested not only his strength, but his vision. The Lydians, led by the formidable Croesus, believed themselves invincible, their riches fortifying their pride. Cyrus's armies marched with determination, and the clash between fortune and valor was imminent. With each battle fought, with each city conquered, the empire grew, stretching from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River. A network of roads, trade routes, and communication blossomed across this vast land like veins in a living body. The Persian Empire thrived, a mosaic of cultures, languages, and traditions. Yet, even as prosperity flourished, the specter of ambition loomed large. Cyrus's son, Cambyses, took the throne after his father's death. Though blessed with ambition, he struggled under the weight of his father's legacy. Cambyses set his sights on Egypt, a land rich in history and mystery. The conquest was swift, brutal, and filled with blood. The Egyptians revered their pharaohs as gods, but Cambyses was undeterred. He waged war with an icy resolve, the desert winds whispering tales of his tyranny. Upon conquering Egypt, he claimed the title of pharaoh, but the victory felt hollow, a crown worn with a heart burdened by grief and guilt. The Persian Empire had reached unprecedented heights, but with every ascent came the risk of a devastating fall. Cambyses, plagued by paranoia and madness, vanished into the sands of time, leaving a power vacuum and the empire trembling. Rumors swirled like desert storms of betrayal, of secret assassinations, of a usurper ready to seize the crown. The empire stood at a crossroads, and the very foundations of its glory trembled. Then came Darius, a warrior of the elite immortals, a man whose ambition matched the vastness of the empire itself. He took the reins, unifying the tumultuous factions and restoring order with a masterful hand. Darius was a visionary, introducing reforms that would lay the groundwork for a thriving administration. He created a system of satrapies, dividing the vast empire into manageable provinces, each ruled by a governor who held the king's authority. This innovation bridged the gap between distant lands and the heart of Persia, creating a sturdy fabric of unity. Yet Darius was not content merely to rule. He sought to expand the empire's horizons. His gaze turned to Greece, a land of fierce warriors and independent city-states. The Battle of Marathon became a defining moment, where Persian forces clashed against the tenacity of the Greeks. The outcome would shape the destiny of the empire and reverberate through history. As the Persian army rushed onto the battlefield, their numbers seemed insurmountable. Darius stood resolute, embodying the might of a king who would not be thwarted. But as the dust settled, the reality of defeat cut deep. The Greeks, united in their determination, sent shockwaves through the very heart of Persia. The empire, once thought invincible, faced a challenge unlike any it had ever known. Darius returned to his throne, grappling with the implications of a loss that pierced through the achievements of his reign. As the shadows lengthened, the stage was set for Xerxes, Darius's son, whose ambition burned bright and fierce. He inherited a kingdom that had reached its zenith, but also bore the scars of conflict and division. The Battle of Thermopylae loomed on the horizon, a clash that would pit the mighty Persian army against a mere handful of Spartans, warriors who would stand against the tide. Xerxes, filled with the fire of revenge and the desire to prove his worth, prepared for war. The air thickened with tension, and destiny beckoned with a seductive whisper. Would Xerxes rise to the occasion, or would the weight of expectation crush him? As he stared into the depths of the Aegean Sea, waves crashing against the shore, a sense of foreboding settled over him. The empire, vast and powerful, now danced on the edge of a knife, teetering between glory and ruin. The story of the Persian Empire surged forward, a river of lives intertwined, each seeking their purpose in the ever-unfolding saga of ambition, conflict, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. In the stillness of the early dawn, the air crackled with a tension so thick that it felt as if the world itself held its breath. The Ionian cities, drenched in the salty tang of the Aegean Sea, were poised on the edge of change. Little did they know the flame of rebellion was flickering to life, ready to ignite a blaze that would send shockwaves across the known world. The whispers of discontent had grown into a rising tide, and soon hearts would beat faster, filled with anger and hope, as the cry for freedom pierced through the silence. In the streets of Miletus, the sun cast long shadows over the cobblestones, illuminating the rugged faces of men and women who had endured years of oppression. They were farmers, artisans, and traders, but above all, they were human beings craving dignity and self-determination. The Persian Empire loomed large over them, its iron grip tightening every day. Taxes bled their livelihoods dry, and the voices of their own leaders echoed hollowly, suffocated by the demands of a foreign king. Amidst this growing unrest, a figure emerged like a beacon of defiance. Aristagoras, the satrap of Miletus, once a loyal servant of the great King Darius, now found himself torn between his duty and the cries of his people. The weight of responsibility bore heavily on his shoulders. He had tasted the bitterness of oppression, and within him simmered a desire to break free from the chains that bound his city. As he paced his chamber, the flickering flame of a single oil lamp danced, casting eerie shadows that mirrored the turmoil within him. A plan began to form in Aristagoras' mind, one that would require bravery, cunning, and the unyielding spirit of his fellow citizens. He envisioned an alliance, a coalition of the oppressed, ready to stand together against their common foe. The dream of liberation was intoxicating, and he knew the time to act was drawing near. A call to arms would be sounded, a rallying cry that would awaken the dormant courage of the Ionian people. Meanwhile, far away in the rugged hills of Caria, the fire of rebellion had already spread. The city of Sardis, with its imposing citadel and wealth, was ripe for revolution. A band of rebels, fueled by stories of freedom and independence, banded together, their hearts pounding with the rhythm of their shared struggle. They were farmers turned warriors, brothers and sisters ready to shed blood for their beliefs. The night was alive with their fervor, their voices rising like an anthem against tyranny. As dawn broke, they surged forward, hearts racing, fists clenched, ready to face the might of the Persian Empire. This was not just a battle for land. It was a fight for the very soul of their identity. Their resolve was palpable. It echoed down the narrow streets of Sardis, reverberating off the ancient walls that had witnessed countless tales of glory and defeat. When they finally struck, the sound was thunderous, a clash of dreams and despair that shattered the morning calm. The flames of revolt spread like wildfire across the Ionian cities, igniting a fierce wave of solidarity. From Ephesus to Chios, voices united in a chorus of defiance. Men and women, young and old, poured into the streets, their hearts beating as one. The cry of freedom rang out, a primal roar that shook the very foundations of their oppressors. This wasn't just a rebellion, it was a movement of the human spirit, breaking free from the shackles of tyranny. As the rebellion grew stronger, the Persians felt the tremors of unrest deep within their empire. In the opulent halls of Susa, King Darius, a ruler known for his iron fist, received news that twisted in his gut like a dagger. His gaze grew cold, his mind racing with the implications of this uprising. The Greeks were not just a collection of city-states, they were a fierce people with an unyielding spirit that could not be easily broken. The thought of losing control over Ionia fueled a fire of rage within him. His empire was vast, stretching from the Indus River to the Aegean Sea, but whispers of rebellion threatened to unravel the very fabric of his rule. In the face of impending doom, Aristagoras and his allies understood that they were standing at a precipice. They were not just fighting for their homes, they were fighting for the future of their children and the legacy of their forefathers. The idea of freedom had taken root in their hearts, and there was no turning back. It was not just a political struggle, it was deeply personal, a fight for identity and existence, a battle that would resonate for generations to come. The whispers of revolt caught the attention of other Greek city-states. In a moment of profound unity, allies emerged from unexpected places. The flames of the Ionian revolt flickered brightly, and soon they would reach the shores of mainland Greece. In Athens, the air buzzed with excitement and anticipation. The seeds of democracy and freedom were sown in the fertile ground of rebellion, and the city stood poised to embrace the challenge. The echoes of the Ionian struggle would soon resonate in the vivid streets of Athens, sparking a fire that could not be extinguished. As the battle for Ionia raged on, the tides of history began to shift. Men and women took up arms, their spirits ignited by a shared dream of liberty. The clash of swords, the cries of the wounded, And the fierce determination of the rebels created a symphony of war that rang out across the seas. The Ionian Revolt was more than just a struggle against Persia. It was a testament to the power of the human spirit, a spark that would ignite a flame of resistance that would burn bright throughout the ages. In the chaos of war, in the heat of battle, legends would be born, heroes would rise from the ashes of despair, their names forever etched into the annals of history. The Ionian Revolt was just the beginning, a small flicker in the vast expanse of human endeavor, but in that flicker lay the promise of hope, the courage of countless souls who dared to challenge the immense weight of oppression. The fight for freedom was far from over, and it would resonate through time, a beautiful and painful reminder of the eternal quest for justice and dignity. As dawn broke over the city of Corinth, a shivering breeze swept through its streets, carrying whispers of impending war. The sun, a timeless witness to the struggles of men, began to rise, casting golden rays that touched the worn stones of the Acropolis. Here, in this pivotal moment where shadows danced with light, the air was thick with tension and uncertainty as city-states nestled in the embrace of the Peloponnese prepared to forge a bond that would change their fate forever. Athens, with its proud temples and bustling agora, stood strong. Yet, within the hearts of its citizens, a flicker of fear smoldered. They had heard the stories, the mighty army of Persia, a relentless force that swept across lands like a tempest, leaving fear and devastation in its wake. The news had traveled like wildfire, igniting a sense of urgency among the Greeks. They could no longer afford the luxury of isolation, for a formidable enemy loomed on the horizon. In the shadowy corners of the agora, men of influence congregated, their voices low and urgent, like the rustle of leaves before a storm. The stakes were high, and the time for action was now. The leaders of city-states, once rivals steeped in their own pride and ambition, began to see the undeniable truth. Only together could they hope to stand against the tide of destruction. They were not just defenders of their own lands, they were the guardians of a shared legacy, a culture rich in art and philosophy, a civilization that could not be extinguished without a fight. The great statesman Themistocles, with his piercing gaze and impassioned words, emerged as one of the leading voices of this burgeoning alliance. He understood the gravity of the moment. "We must unite," he proclaimed, his voice echoing off the marble columns as if even the gods themselves leaned in to listen. "If we do not stand as one, we will surely fall. Our children will curse us for our cowardice." His words hung in the air, palpable and electric, stirring the spirits of all who heard them. Across the way, in Sparta, the legendary warriors honed their skills, their disciplined lives devoted to preparing for battle. With hardened hearts and iron resolve, they considered the proposal of unity. Leonidas, the noble king, stood before his men, his presence commanding. "We are Spartans. We do not fear death. What we fear is dishonor. If we do not unite with our brothers, we risk losing everything that defines us." The fire in his chest ignited a burning desire for collaboration. No longer could they stand alone in their pride. News of the league spread like a wild flame, reaching the shores of Aegina, the heights of Thebes, and even the distant realms of Argos. Each city-state felt the gravity of the impending threat. The thought of Persian banners unfurling in their sacred lands was more than they could bear. The idea of unity, once a mere flicker, transformed into a roaring inferno that propelled each city into action. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, envoys from Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and beyond convened at the sacred temple of Apollo in Delphi. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, the air thick with unspoken hopes and fears. Each representative, adorned in their city's colors, embodied the weight of their people's expectations. They were not just men, they were the living embodiment of thousands who stood behind them, each heart beating in rhythm with the other. The oracle, a figure shrouded in mystery, emerged from the shadows, her voice echoing like thunder through the chamber. "A coalition is your only salvation. Embrace the strength in your unity, lest you find yourselves shackled by despair." Her words, cryptic yet powerful, seemed to weave a thread of fate that bound them together, igniting a determination that coursed through their veins. That night, as the stars blanketed the sky, the leaders sat around a flickering fire, each man's thoughts racing. They spoke of their differences, their histories, but more importantly, they spoke of their shared destiny. Stories of valor and sacrifice mingled with laughter and the bittersweet taste of remembrance. Tears were shed for those who would fight and those who would be lost. A bond forged in vulnerability and strength began to crystallize in their hearts. Days turned into weeks, and the Hellenic League took shape. City-states that once stood aloof began to craft strategies and unite their forces. Each meeting was a rhythmic dance of ideas and emotions, a testament to their shared resolve. Together they prepared for the storm that would soon crash upon them. Yet within this newfound unity, the undercurrents of fear still flowed. Questions lingered in dimly lit corridors. Would they stand strong when the dust settled? Could the fragile alliance withstand the tests of battle? As the sun rose one fateful morning, with the Persian forces marching closer, the tension reached a critical point. Each leader looked around, eyeing the faces of their comrades, and deep within their chests, the weight of responsibility settled heavily. In the days that followed, the sound of clashing swords and battle cries echoed louder with each passing hour. The citizens of Greece felt it, the palpable anxiety mingling with hope, a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. The world was on the brink of a monumental clash, a moment that would define generations. The Hellenic League stood ready, propelled by the unbreakable bond formed through shared purpose, igniting a fire that would burn brightly in the annals of history. As they prepared to face their common foe, the very air seemed to vibrate with the energy of determination and fear. And in that moment, the fate of Greece hung delicately in the balance, waiting for the first clash of steel against steel, the first cry of battle that would echo through time, forever marking the resolve of a united people against a seemingly invincible enemy. The air was heavy with tension, a vast army, the likes of which the Greek world had never seen, gathered on the shores of the Hellespont. The sun glinted off the polished armor of thousands of soldiers, their banners fluttering like restless birds in the wind. This was not merely a troop of men, it was the mighty Persian Empire led by the indomitable King Xerxes. An entire world held its breath as the fateful moment approached when the Persian forces would make their move. The Hellespont, a narrow stretch of water, a barrier yet a bridge, stood between the empire and the conquest of Greece. As the soldiers lined up along the shoreline, the sounds of their preparations filled the air. The clink of metal, the murmur of voices, and the distant crash of waves against the rocky shore. Persian engineers had worked tirelessly, constructing a series of boats, each one like a floating city, ready to carry their soldiers across the strait. The sheer scale of the undertaking was awe-inspiring. It was as if the very land itself had been reshaped to serve their ambition. Xerxes, tall and regal, surveyed his troops with a commanding presence. His eyes, dark and intense, sparkled with a mix of confidence and something darker, an unquenchable thirst for glory. He shouted commands, his voice cutting through the din, urging his men forward. In his heart he knew this moment was not just a crossing, it was a declaration of dominance, a message to all who would dare oppose him. As the first ships began to move, a hush fell over the soldiers. The sight was breathtaking, an armada of oars slicing through the water, sending ripples echoing across the Hellespont. Each vessel carried not just warriors, but dreams of conquest and visions of a new world reshaped by Persian rule. The soldiers felt a surge of pride and excitement, their hearts beating in time with the steady rhythm of the oars. But among the ranks stood men who were not just warriors. They were fathers, brothers, and sons, each one with lives left behind, each one driven by a mix of duty and fear. They thought of their homes, their families, and the uncertain fate that awaited them across the strait. Whispers of doubt crept into their minds, but they pushed them aside, rallying together under the banner of an empire that promised glory. As each boat reached the opposite shore, cheers erupted. The sound was deafening, filling the air with an energy that radiated from the soldiers' hearts. Yet, beneath that celebration lay a current of unease. The Greeks, valiant and proud, were waiting, preparing to defend their homeland with every ounce of strength they could muster. They had heard the tales of Persian might, but they had also heard of their courage. The clash was imminent, and the world seemed to hold its breath. On the Greek side, a different atmosphere prevailed. The soldiers of Greece were not an untrained mob. They were fiercely devoted to their land. In contrast to the Persian forces, their numbers were fewer, but their spirit was unbreakable. They gathered to strategize, to share tales of bravery, to remind one another of the stakes. Every heart was aflame with a resolve that was palpable in the air. They knew not just what they were fighting against, but what they were fighting for: freedom, honor, home. Back across the water, Xerxes stood resolute, his gaze fixed on the horizon. In the distance, dark clouds began to gather, mirroring the storm brewing in the hearts of both armies. Tension hung like a thick fog, wrapping around every soldier, every ship, as if time itself had come to a standstill. The crossing was more than just a military maneuver. It was a moment that would shape history. As the last of the ships landed, the ground quaked with the arrival of thousands more men. They poured onto the shore like a tsunami, marching in unison. their spirits lifted by the belief that destiny was on their side. The waves of the Hellespont crashed against the rocks, a furious symphony echoing the battle cries that loomed on the horizon. But the winds whispered warnings. The Greeks, fierce and ready, stood prepared to defend their land with every ounce of their beings. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the battlefield. And for a moment, both sides paused. It was a moment suspended in time, where the world seemed to hinge on the brink of chaos. Yet, amid the solemnity, fear flickered in the hearts of many. Would they survive this onslaught? Would they be remembered as heroes, or forgotten in the annals of time? As the first arrows flew, each one a harbinger of fate, the air grew electric with anticipation. The clash of swords, the cries of men, and the roar of battle would soon erupt, drowning out all thoughts of peace. And as the Persian forces surged forward, the Hellespont's waters swirled with the turmoil of two worlds colliding. The whispers of fate had been spoken, and history was about to be written in blood and glory. The ground trembled beneath heavy boots, and the cries of warriors filled the air, a cacophony that would echo through the ages, binding the fate of nations. In that moment, amidst the chaos and the clashing steel, the future hung in the balance, waiting to see just who would emerge as victors in this monumental conflict. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with strokes of crimson, both armies prepared for the fight of their lives. The Hellespont, once a mere body of water, had transformed into a stage for one of history's greatest battles, a testament to human ambition and the relentless pursuit of power. And so the story continued, each moment a heartbeat in the rhythm of war. As the tide turned and destiny awaited, the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the rugged landscape of Greece. Dust swirled in the air, whipped up by the restless winds that forewarned of the storm to come. It was an ordinary day, yet the very essence of destiny loomed large, like a gathering thundercloud. On one side stood the might of Persia, a colossal wave of soldiers stretching as far as the eye could see, their armor gleaming ominously. On the other side, a mere handful of Spartan warriors prepared to stand their ground, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and unwavering courage. The tension crackled in the air as King Leonidas of Sparta surveyed his small army. A mere 300 men, their faces set with resolve. Each soldier stood like a statue, muscles taut, eyes ablaze with determination. The very ground beneath them seemed to pulse with a history of battles fought and victories won. Leonidas, a man forged in the fires of war, felt the weight of his ancestors' legacy upon his shoulders. He knew he was not merely fighting for his life, but for the freedom of his people, for the very idea of democracy itself. As the Spartans prepared for what seemed an impossible task, whispers rose among them. They spoke of honor, of valor, of the stories that would be told for generations to come. Each man knew that fate would not look kindly upon the weak. They would not fall quietly into the shadows, but instead embrace the light of their ancestors, even if it meant facing the overwhelming tide of Persian might. Meanwhile, across the narrow pass at Thermopylae, the Persian armies swelled. Xerxes, the ambitious king, sat upon his golden throne, surveying the vastness of his forces with a sense of triumph. His soldiers were not merely men, they were a flood of humanity, an overwhelming force fueled by the promise of glory and riches. Yet, beneath the surface of that mighty facade, there lay a current of uncertainty. Would a mere handful of warriors truly stand against thousands? The whispers of doubt fluttered like moths against the flame, but the king silenced them with a wave of his hand. "Bring me Leonidas," Xerxes commanded, his voice a low rumble echoing through the ranks. The Spartan king would be a trophy, a demonstration of power to the world, a man brought low before the might of Persia. Little did he know that Leonidas was not a man to be broken. As the words escaped Xerxes' lips, a chill swept through the ranks of both armies. This was more than a battle, it was a clash of ideologies, a myth in the making. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the Greek landscape. In the shadows of the mountains, warriors gathered, their hearts beating in unison, a rhythm of defiance against the impending storm. Among them was a young Spartan named Paros, whose hands trembled as he gripped his spear. Fear and excitement warred within him, but as he gazed upon his king, he felt the fires of courage spark within his chest. "What will you do, my king?" Paros asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Leonidas turned, a fierce glint in his eye. "I will do what Spartans do," he declared, his voice steady and resolute. "We fight." That simple declaration echoed through the hearts of those gathered. They were not merely individuals, they were brothers in arms, bound by a shared purpose. Each man understood that this battle was about more than territory or power. It was about freedom, the freedom to choose one's own destiny, to live and die by one's own code. Meanwhile, at sea, the winds had begun to shift, signaling the coming of another battle. The Persian navy, a fleet of ships brimming with warriors and archers, was preparing to strike at Artemisium, their eyes set on seizing control of the waters. The Athenian fleet, a coalition of desperate yet determined sailors, braced themselves for the tumultuous waves of conflict. Every man aboard felt the weight of their homeland resting on their shoulders. They were outnumbered, but the fierce fire of determination burned brightly in their hearts. As the roar of the sea collided with the crashing waves, Admiral Themistocles stood at the helm, his brow furrowed. "We must hold our ground," he shouted to his sailors. "If we falter here, the flame of our freedom will be extinguished." The men cheered, their voices rising like a chorus of hope amidst the storm. Each wave that crashed against their ships echoed their collective resolve. They were the defenders of their way of life, ready to face the storm head-on rather than bow to the overwhelming might of Persia. In the distance, the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the horizon. With it came the echoes of conflict, the clashing of swords and shields, the cries of the brave and the desperate. The battles of Thermopylae and Artemisium would not be just moments in history, they would become a living testament to the human spirit's ability to fight against insurmountable odds. As the two fronts prepared for war, the world watched with bated breath, unaware of the stories that would unfold, the legends that would arise from the smoke and chaos. Who would prevail? The answer lay in the hearts of those who fought, not just for glory, but for the very essence of what it meant to be free. And so, as the sun rose higher in the sky, the stage was set for a clash that would be whispered through the annals of time, a tale of bravery, sacrifice, and an unyielding desire for freedom. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the expanse of the Aegean Sea, where every ripple held stories of power and peril. It was here, just off the coast of the island of Salamis, that the breath of fate hung heavy in the salty air. In a world where empires clashed and men fought for glory, the waters whispered secrets of an upcoming conflict that would change the course of history forever. Salamis, cradled by the sea, was more than just an island. It was a strategic masterpiece, a key to the very heart of Greece. The narrow strait that separated the island from the mainland was a battleground waiting to happen, its waters both a sanctuary and a trap. As the tide ebbed and flowed, the landscape shifted, revealing the raw beauty of craggy shores and hidden coves. It was a place where the brave could hide and the foolish could fall into the depths of despair. In the years leading up to the Great Clash, the Persian Empire loomed like an unstoppable tide, vast and powerful, ready to engulf the city-states of Greece. Their navy was a formidable beast, a collection of ships that danced with the elegance of a predator. They were lavishly adorned, their sails billowing in the wind like the wings of mythical creatures soaring above the waves. Each vessel was a testament to Persian ambition, engineered for dominance on the water. And yet, it was the geography of Salamis that would soon turn the tide against them. The Greeks, smaller in number but rich in spirit, had a different kind of power. Their ships, the triremes, were sleek and fast, designed for agility and precision. Each vessel was a blend of art and warcraft, crafted by hands that understood the sea as a friend and foe. They were built for the narrow channels of Salamis, and where every inch counted, where speed and skill would determine the victor. The slim hulls glided through the water, whispering promises of glory to those who dared to wield them. As dusk fell, the tension in the air thickened like the gathering storm clouds. The Greek commanders gathered on the rocky outcrops, their hearts pounding in rhythm with the crashing waves. They spoke in hushed tones, their eyes casting glances toward the horizon, where the dark silhouettes of the Persian fleet began to emerge. Each ship was a harbinger of doom, a reminder of the daunting task that lay ahead. The weight of their ancestors' hopes pressed down on them, igniting a fire of determination within. The fate of their city-states hung in the balance. The strategic importance of Salamis was not just a matter of geography, it was a symbol of resistance. It represented the spirit of a people unwilling to submit to tyranny. Here, every rock, every gust of wind, and every wave felt like a part of the battle itself, urging the Greeks onward. The sheer cliffs of Salamis towered over the waters, standing as silent sentinels, bearing witness to the courage that would soon be displayed. As the Persian ships drew closer, the Greeks took a collective breath, sensing the shift in the air. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the decks of both fleets. The strait, once a peaceful passage, now churned with the promise of conflict. The Greeks had their backs against the wall, but in that moment of desperation, they found clarity. The narrow waters of Salamis had their own intentions, ready to reveal the weaknesses of the larger force. The call to arms echoed through the ranks. Each oarsman felt the pulse of the sea beneath him, a reminder that they were fighting for home, for family, for freedom. The clash of swords and the thunder of oars would soon resonate through the waters, an anthem of defiance against the encroaching storm. The Greeks, with their hearts ablaze, prepared to turn the straits into a theater of war. As the first arrows flew and the tension snapped like a bowstring, the battle commenced with a ferocity that startled even the fiercest of warriors. The once serene waters transformed into a chaotic whirlwind, ships crashing against one another, wood splintering, and screams punctuating the air. The Greeks maneuvered with a precision that came from understanding their territory, using the narrow strait to outsmart the lumbering Persian fleet. Every turn, every twist of the oars was choreographed like a dance, a testament to their superior knowledge of the waters they called home. Each skirmish felt like a heartbeat, quickening, rising, until the very essence of Salamis seemed to pulse with life. The island itself became a character in this epic tale, a protector of its people, a witness to their struggles. The cries of the fallen mingled with the sound of crashing waves, echoing the relentless spirit of those who fought for their freedom. In the midst of battle, the Greeks found not just survival, but a reaffirmation of identity. Each victory against the mighty Persians reinforcing their bond and igniting a flame of hope. The strait, with all its twists and turns, became a labyrinth of opportunity for the Greeks. As they pushed forward, their hearts lit with valor. Each clash of steel was not just about survival, it was about destiny. The geography of Salamis was their ally, drawing the Persian might into a chokehold where their numbers meant little against the skillful artistry of the triremes. The island became a cradle of revolution, a stage where the smallest of forces could topple the greatest of giants. As night enveloped the battlefield, the stars shimmered above, a silent audience to the epic struggle below. The Greeks fought not only against an invading force, but for the very soul of their homeland. Each wave that crashed upon the shores of Salamis was a reminder of their resilience, and in that moment, the fate of two worlds hung precariously in the balance, one under the weight of empire, the other buoyed by the spirit of freedom. The battle was far from over. But the tides had begun to turn, and with them the very fabric of history was poised to unravel, revealing the true power of Salamis, a small island with an indomitable spirit. The sun began to rise over the Athenian harbor, casting a golden glow upon the still waters. The air was thick with anticipation. In the distance, wooden ships bobbed gently against the tide, their sleek forms promising power and speed. Among them, one vessel stood out, a masterpiece of innovation, the trireme. Its 3 tiers of oars glistened like the scales of a mythical creature, ready to slice through the waves with deadly precision. The fate of Athens rested upon its decks, and the sound of men shouting orders echoed like thunder, igniting a fire in the hearts of those who served. Crafted with extraordinary care, the trireme was not just a ship. It was a symbol of Athenian might and resilience. Its design was revolutionary. The lower row of oarsmen sat in a narrow hull, their arms moving in unison, driving the vessel forward with fierce determination. Above them, the second and third tiers added to the power, creating a rhythm that seemed to beat in time with the very pulse of the city itself. The triremes were light, agile, and capable of maneuvers that would leave their enemies gasping in disbelief. Every Athenian sailor knew that their lives depended on this technological marvel. As the crew prepared for battle, a sense of camaraderie filled the air. Faces painted with the grime of hard labor glistened with hope and fear. Young men stood shoulder to shoulder with seasoned veterans, their hearts pounding in sync as they strapped on armor that felt heavier than the weight of their mission. Each man understood that this was not just a fight for survival, but a fight for their identity. They were Athenians, and the sea was their domain. The moment the signal was given, the trireme surged forward, cutting through the water like a knife through silk. The sound of oars slicing the surface was a symphony of human ambition. With every stroke, the crew felt the thrill of the sport, the rush of adrenaline coursing through their veins. They were not merely fighting to win, they were fighting for their homes, their families, their very future. As they approached the enemy ships, the tension in the air thickened, a palpable energy that sent shivers down their spines. The opposing fleet loomed ahead, a wall of menacing vessels that glinted ominously in the sunlight. Each crew member knew the stories, the tales of those who had gone before them, how their ancestors had carved out a legacy on the waters. It was now their turn to contribute to that proud heritage, to ensure that the Athenian name would echo through the ages. When the clash began, it was as if the world exploded. The trireme's ram, a heavily reinforced prow, struck with a bone-rattling thud against the side of the enemy ship. The sound was deafening, like the roar of a lion. Chaos erupted as the sailors fought tooth and nail. Fear and courage intertwined in a dance of desperation. The trireme, with its speed and agility, darted around enemy vessels, striking fear into the hearts of those aboard. It was relentless. Every thrust of the oars was a declaration of defiance, a promise that Athens would not be subdued. In a moment of clarity amidst the chaos, the helmsman stood tall, guiding the ship through the fray. His hands gripped the tiller with white-knuckled intensity as he shouted commands that cut through the noise like arrows. Sailors responded instinctively, each man a link in a chain forged by trust and shared purpose. Every shift of the ship felt like a heartbeat, alive, pulsing, and driven by the dreams of their ancestors. As one enemy vessel succumbed to the ramming force of the trireme, a roar of triumph erupted from the crew. It echoed like a wild song, a powerful declaration that the Athenian spirit was unbreakable. The waters around them churned, painted with the chaos of battle, but the trireme was not merely a weapon. It was a lifeline, a means of escape, a vessel of hope. And as they surged forward, the sailors felt the weight of their city upon their shoulders. When day turned to dusk, the battle raged on, fueled by the burning ambition of the Athenian sailors. Each clash of wood against wood, every shout of command resonated with the passion of 1,000 years of history. The trireme was not just a tool of war, it was a beacon of identity, a reminder that Athens was a force to be reckoned with upon the waves. Every victorious moment felt like a heartbeat, a reminder that they were fighting not just for conquest, but for the soul of their city. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson hue over the water, the tide began to change. The enemy fleet, weary and battered, faltered. The Athenians pressed on, driven by the fierce winds of fate and destiny. This was not merely a battle. It was a testament to their resilience, a promise that their legacy would endure. But the cost of victory was high, the tragic toll of war rippling through the hearts of the victors. Amidst the glory and triumph, the faces of fallen comrades loomed large. With every cheer, there was a whisper of sorrow, a reminder that life and death danced perilously close on the edges of war. The trireme, gliding through the aftermath, became a vessel of remembrance, a floating tribute to those who had fought valiantly for their homeland. The dawn of a new era was on the horizon, and as the sailors glided back to port, their hearts swelled with pride. They were not just warriors, they were the guardians of Athenian democracy, the protectors of a legacy that would echo through time. The trireme had transformed them into something greater than themselves, binding them together in a shared purpose that transcended the chaos of battle. And as they looked out over the shimmering waters, they knew that the age of the trireme had just begun. The waves seemed to whisper promises of new adventures, of challenges yet to come. The sea called to them, a siren song that would not be silenced. Their journey was far from over, and the heart of Athens beat strong and true within them, pushing them ever forward into the unknown, where more battles awaited and where the echoes of their triumphs would continue to resonate for generations to come. The sun hung low over Athens, casting long shadows across the bustling agora, where merchants shouted and children played. Among them stood a man whose mind worked like a brilliant storm, Themistocles. To the casual observer, he might have appeared just another citizen among many, yet beneath his composed exterior simmered a fiery determination. His vision for Athens was not built on the foundations of mere survival. It was a vision of greatness, of a city that would rise to become a beacon of civilization. It was a time when the winds of war howled ominously on the horizon, and the specter of the Persian Empire loomed larger with each passing day. Themistocles knew that merely defending the city with its walls would not be enough. He envisioned a navy that could match the might of any foe, a fleet that would carry the pride of Athens across the waves. As he walked through the bustling streets, he could hear the murmurs of doubt around him. Many in Athens clung to the idea of ground battles, of hoplites clashing in a dance of valor. But Themistocles had seen the future, and it lay not in the dirt of the battlefield, but in the power of the sea. He spoke of ships, of triremes that could slice through the waves, of strategy that would outsmart brute force. Some listened, their eyes alight with his fervor, while others scoffed, unwilling to turn away from tradition. His charisma was magnetic. It drew men and women to his side, igniting a spark in their hearts. In meetings at the assembly, he stood tall, his voice resonating through the crowd, a siren song laced with passion and urgency. "We must build our fleet. We must take the fight to them." he urged, his arms outstretched as if to embrace the very sea he longed to command. His words painted vivid images in the minds of the Athenians, of ships riding waves, of victories snatched from the jaws of despair. But the path he chose was fraught with challenges. The very citizens who had once cheered him would grow wary, whispers of betrayal washing through the city like a bitter tide. "Why waste resources on ships when we could bolster our walls?" they would ask, seeking to shackle their dreams to the familiar. Yet Themistocles, undeterred, pressed on, knowing that true leadership meant taking risks, daring to tread where others feared. With every stone laid for the shipyards, every timber pulled from the forests, he felt the pulse of the city quicken. Themistocles envisioned a grand fleet of triremes, each vessel a testament to Athenian ingenuity and courage. The sound of hammers striking wood echoed in the docks, a rhythm that danced with the heartbeat of a city awakening to its potential. He could see it, the day when the Persian forces would come and the Athenian navy would rise like a tidal wave, crashing upon them with the ferocity of a lion protecting its pride. Yet, for every triumph, there were shadows. Themistocles faced opposition from powerful factions, men whose wealth and influence sought to undermine him. They clung to traditions, familiar comforts, and the safety of the land. With each meeting, he felt the weight of their skepticism pressing down on him, but he would not falter. He met their doubt with resolve, wielding his intellect like a sword, dissecting their arguments, exposing their fears, and turning the tide of opinion with his relentless spirit. Days turned into months, and the city buzzed with preparations. Athenians gathered at the docks, hands calloused from labor, but hearts filled with hope. Themistocles' dream was becoming tangible, the fleet of ships that would bear the weight of their collective aspirations soon to be realized. The gleaming wooden hulls, adorned with oars, would soon cut through the sparkling Aegean waters, ready to defend their homeland against the looming threat. As the sun dipped below the horizon one fateful evening, the first ships slipped into the water, their sides glistening like jewels under the fading light. Themistocles stood at the shore, a solitary figure, his heart swelling with pride and fear alike. He could almost hear the distant drums of war. The murmurs of the citizens around him filled the air, a blend of excitement and apprehension. Would this brave new fleet be enough? Could they truly stand against the might of Persia? In that moment, he felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The decisions he had made would not only shape Athens, but would echo through time, carving the tale of his city into the annals of the world. As he looked out over the waters, a tempest of emotions surged within him. Themistocles was not merely fighting for survival, he was igniting a legacy, a future where Athens would stand unyielding and proud. But the storm was brewing, and with it the reality of war loomed ever closer. The tension in the air thickened, each heartbeat resonating with the anticipation of the unknown. Themistocles sensed that the day of reckoning would come, and when it did, he would be ready. He would not only defend the city he loved, but would lead it to triumph, possibly changing the course of history forever. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, illuminating the ships that seemed to dance upon the water, Themistocles knew that the next chapter of Athens' story was just beginning, but the shadows of doubt still lingered, and the whispers of betrayal were never far behind. He could feel them like a cold wind swirling around him. His resolve would soon be tested in ways he could hardly imagine. Would the people rally behind him when the time came? Would they stand as one against the tide of invasion? A chill ran down his spine, but he would not allow fear to govern him. Themistocles took a deep breath, his gaze still fixed on the horizon. He was a man on a mission, a visionary leader who would stand at the helm of history. And as the ships bobbed in the water, he knew he was racing against time, with the fate of Athens hanging in the balance. The storm was coming, and with it, the chance to unleash the power of a united city. Themistocles was ready to embrace the chaos, to seize the moment, knowing that his unwavering spirit could guide Athens into the dawn of a new age. The storm had gathered as the Persian fleet assembled at the horizon, dark clouds looming overhead, mirroring the tension that crackled in the air. Thousands of ships glistened under the sun, an ocean of vessels stretching as far as the eye could see. Each ship, a testament to the ambition of a mighty empire, was a floating fortress, brimming with soldiers, supplies, and the promise of power. It was a sight that could send chills down the spine of even the bravest sailor. At the helm of this grand armada stood King Xerxes, his presence commanding and imposing, his dark hair whipped around his face in the wind, and his eyes burned with the fire of conquest. He had gathered an unprecedented fleet, one that numbered anywhere from 600 to 1,200 ships, depending on the source. This vast assembly was not merely a show of strength. It was a crucial part of his grand strategy to expand the Persian Empire across the Mediterranean, to subdue and conquer the city-states of Greece. As the sun dipped below the horizon, giving way to the indigo of night, tension hung thick in the air. The Greek city-states, the proud defenders of their land, were well aware of the might that was approaching. They could feel the rumble in their bones, a warning of the tempest that would soon sweep across their shores. The Persian fleet, with its long triremes slicing through the water, was a force to be reckoned with, each oar stroke a heartbeat of ambition and desire. Cunning strategy guided Xerxes, who knew that sheer numbers alone would not guarantee victory. He had meticulously planned each point of attack, calculating the tides, the winds, and the weaknesses of his enemies. His advisors, a blend of seasoned generals and daring strategists, aimed for the vulnerabilities of the Greek formations, plotting to lure them into traps where they would be outnumbered and overwhelmed. The Persian navy relied on a combination of speed and agility, designed to outmaneuver the heavier ships of the Greeks. As the night grew darker, whispers of fear and determination floated through the air among the Persian ranks. Sailors exchanged stories of the gods and prophecies. Tales of glorious victories danced on their lips, yet the specter of defeat loomed large. On one ship, a young oarsman gripped his oar tightly, his heart pounding in rhythm with the thrum of the waves. In his mind, he replayed the stories told by the elders of his village, of heroes and of battles lost. He thought of his family, of the land he had left behind, and the promise of wealth and honor that lay ahead. But with every promise comes a cost. The winds shifted, and so too did the hearts of the men. Some spoke of the legend of the Spartan warriors, the fierce defenders renowned for their courage and discipline. The tales fueled a flame of defiance. Would they truly succumb to the might of the Persian forces, or could they rise against the tide? In the midst of this whirlwind of emotion, Xerxes remained a pillar of resolve. He understood that leadership was as much about inspiring fear as it was about instilling hope. The fleet was a mix of diverse peoples, Phoenicians, Cypriots, Egyptians, each contributing their unique naval prowess, but also their own aspirations and fears. Xerxes sent a message through the ranks, a rallying cry that echoed in the hearts of the men. Victory was within their grasp, and the spoils of war would be theirs for the taking. But the night was not without its shadows. As the stars twinkled above, a dark omen appeared on the horizon. A fleet of Greek ships, small yet fierce, rode the waves like a pack of wolves. The battle was not just a clash of steel and wood, it was a confrontation of ideals, a fight for freedom against the tide of tyranny. The Greeks, led by the cunning strategist Themistocles, had prepared for this moment. They understood the strategy that Xerxes had devised and were ready to counter it with their own brand of audacity. The moment of truth arrived with the dawn, the sun breaking through the clouds like a beacon of hope. The air crackled with anticipation as both sides prepared for the onslaught. The Persian ships lined up, their sails billowing, ready to unleash their might. The oarsmen, hearts racing, synchronized their strokes, breathing as one with the ship. The tension was palpable as each crew member locked eyes with their comrades. This was not just a battle for land, it was a battle for their very souls. As the order to engage rang out, the clash of metal and the roar of battle cries enveloped the sea. Weapons glinted in the sunlight, and the waves churned with the force of ambition and desperation. The Persian fleet, though vast and impressive, faced the sharp-edged determination of the Greeks. Each ship became a battleground, each sailor a warrior, caught in a tempest of chaos and valor. Leadership was tested in these moments. Xerxes, with his unwavering focus, sought to steer the tide of battle in his favor. His voice boomed above the din, urging his men onward, pushing them to unleash their fury upon the enemy. But in the heart of chaos, doubt began to creep in. With every ship that fell, with every sailor lost to the depths of the sea, the once unshakable confidence began to waver. The Persian fleet, so meticulously constructed, now found itself at a crossroads where numbers clashed with courage and strategy met raw determination. Would they be swept away by the waves of Greek resolve? Or could they rally and claim the victory that had always been within their reach? The ocean roared, and the outcome remained suspended, a haunting reminder that every battle is a dance on the edge of fate, where glory and despair are but two sides of the same coin. As the sun climbed higher, illuminating the struggle on the water, the very essence of leadership and courage hung in the balance, intertwining the fates of two great civilizations. The horizon shimmered with possibilities, and with each passing moment, history itself was being rewritten. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow across the Aegean Sea, a fleet of sleek triremes sliced through the water, their oars dipping in unison like a heartbeat, echoing the pulse of the approaching battle. The air crackled with anticipation, the salty breeze carrying whispers of fate and glory. The Greek sailors, hardened by years of conflict, stood ready at their posts, gripping the oars with calloused hands. eyes fixed on the horizon where enemy ships awaited. Each warrior aboard felt the weight of history on his shoulders as they prepared for the encounter that could alter the course of their lives forever. The tension was palpable, a living thing swirling around them. They had trained for this moment, practicing tirelessly under the watchful eyes of their commanders. Every maneuver had been etched into their muscles, every tactic rehearsed until it became second nature. The stakes were high, the very essence of their homeland lay in the balance. On the flagship, a seasoned captain with a furrowed brow studied the enemy's formations through the haze of dusk. His experience told him that the key to victory lay not only in the strength of their ships, but in their strategic minds. He could almost hear his mentor's voice echoing in his head. "Control the sea, and you control the fate of men." Each ship in the fleet was more than just wood and sail. It was a vessel of pride, a symbol of their unity, and a tool of vengeance against their foes. As the fleet closed in, the captain issued his orders, his voice calm but commanding. The crew moved like a well-oiled machine, fastening ropes, adjusting sails, and preparing for the imminent clash. Each sailor could feel the adrenaline coursing through their veins, transforming their fear into a fierce determination. The enemy ships were not just adversaries, they were the embodiment of every grudge, every slight their people had ever suffered. The thought ignited a fire within them, their hearts beating like war drums. In the depths of the ships, the smell of sweat mingled with the scent of brine as men whispered prayers to their gods. They sought courage from Athena, wisdom from Poseidon, and fury from Ares. Each invocation was a promise to fight not just for themselves, but for their families, their cities, and their very way of life. The sense of brotherhood wrapped around them like a warm cloak, binding them together in purpose. They were not just sailors, they were warriors, ready to face whatever the night would bring. The triremes sliced through the waves, their hulls designed for speed and agility, making them the ideal instruments of battle. The Greeks had perfected naval tactics that emphasized the power of numbers combined with strategic formations. The captain knew that he would deploy the line abreast formation, allowing his ships to fan out and create a wall of oars. This would not only maximize their striking power, but also minimize the chance of being outmaneuvered by the enemy. As night fell, the darkness cloaked their approach, but it also brought uncertainty. The crew could feel the tension rising, the air thick with anticipation. The captain's heart raced, a mix of fear and excitement thrumming through him. He spotted the flickering lights of enemy ships, their silhouettes looming like dark omens against the starry sky. Every breath felt like a countdown, each moment stretching into eternity as they neared the fateful moment of impact. In the silence before the storm, the captain made eye contact with his first mate, a young man full of fire and zeal. They shared a knowing glance, each man understanding that they were about to step into a chaos that would test every fiber of their being. This was more than a battle. It was a test of their mettle, a crucible that would shape their destinies. Suddenly, a loud horn bellowed across the water, slicing through the quiet like a sword through flesh. It was the signal. The moment they had prepared for had come. The crew sprang into action, their voices rising in a battle cry that echoed across the sea and stirred the hearts of every man aboard. Oars plunged, water splashed, and the ship surged forward, propelled by the collective will of men who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The clash was immediate and violent. Ships collided with a thunderous roar, splintering wood and shattering dreams. The captain steered his vessel with precision, aligning it perfectly to ram an enemy trireme head-on. The sounds of metal striking metal, the cries of men, and the waves crashing around them formed a cacophony that would haunt them in the years to come. Fear mingled with exhilaration, the two forces battling within each sailor's heart. As the chaos unfolded, the captain recalled the teachings of the great strategists who had come before him. He deployed the tactics of the Diek Plus, a bold maneuver that involved breaking through the enemy's line with speed and agility. The ships followed his lead, weaving through the enemy ranks like a dancer in a deadly performance. Each maneuver brought them closer to victory or doom, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily upon him. In the thick of the fray, he glimpsed a young sailor, barely more than a boy, fighting for his life. He was surrounded, outnumbered, yet his courage shone like a beacon amid the darkness. With a fierce determination, the captain called out to him, offering guidance through the tumult, encouraging him to fight with the heart that pulsed within him. The boy met his gaze, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. And for a moment, time stood still. In that fleeting glance, they were connected, bound by the struggle for survival and honor. The battle raged on, each moment stretching into a tapestry of valor and desperation. The sun had disappeared entirely, leaving only the moon to witness the clash of titans on the water. With every wave that crashed against their ship, the captain knew this was more than just a fight for territory. It was a testament to their spirit, a dance of life and death that would echo through the ages. But even as the tide turned in their favor, the captain sensed a greater storm brewing on the horizon. One that would test not only their tactical prowess, but their very souls. The outcome of the battle was still uncertain, and as they pushed through the chaos, he couldn't shake the feeling that this clash was only the beginning of something far grander, something that would forever alter the course of their lives and the fate of the world they fought to protect. The sun hung low over the Athenian horizon, casting long shadows that whispered secrets of old. It was a time when the fate of city-states hung in the balance, and the air crackled with tension. With every breath, Themistocles felt the weight of 1,000 eyes upon him, some filled with admiration, others with suspicion. In this moment, as he stood before the bustling agora, his mind was a flurry of strategies, each more audacious than the last. In the shadows of the grand marble temples, the murmurs of discontent grew louder. Themistocles, the astute general and statesman, had always understood the power of information. He knew that knowledge could turn the tide of battle, that the right word in the right ear could unravel even the most tightly woven plans of the enemy. As the specter of war loomed closer, his cleverness transformed from mere cunning into an art form, an intricate dance of espionage and misdirection. He had learned the art of deception not merely from books or rhetoric, but from the streets of Athens itself, where every glance and whisper held the potential for betrayal. Themistocles crafted a facade that was almost poetic, a man of the people, yet one who spun webs of intrigue from the shadows. His reputation was a double-edged sword, admired by allies yet feared by enemies. In his quest for supremacy, he summoned a network of spies, men and women who wove their way through the city, blending into the fabric of daily life. They carried messages hidden in the folds of their garments, and secrets danced on their tongues. With every morsel of information he collected, Themistocles felt the thrill of power surge through him. Each piece fit into a larger puzzle, revealing a dangerous portrait of his adversaries, the Persians. On one fateful evening, when the sky was painted with hues of crimson, he orchestrated a ruse that would send shivers down the spines of those who dared to oppose him. He summoned a trusted ally, a sly and fearless man named Cimon. They met in a secluded grove, where the scent of olive trees mingled with the distant sounds of the city. There, with a flickering torch casting shadows on their faces, Themistocles laid out his plan, his voice low, yet charged with fervor. "Cimon," he said, eyes gleaming with mischief, "we must spread a word, a rumor that will travel faster than the swiftest horse. Our enemies must believe they are drawing near to victory. They must think we are weak and divided." Cimon nodded, the weight of the scheme heavy on his shoulders. "But how will we convince them? The Persians are not fools. They will see through any deception." With a sly smile, Themistocles leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "We will play on their greed. We'll let them believe they can turn Athenian allies against us. We'll fill their hearts with the illusion of betrayal. They shall think that we are retreating, leaving our city vulnerable. It will be their greatest mistake." Days slipped by as the plan unfolded, like the slow unfurling of a flower. Rumors took flight, carried by the winds of gossip, reaching even the ears of the Persian generals. Themistocles watched with a mixture of exhilaration and dread, knowing that the game of espionage had begun in earnest. His heart raced as tales of Athenian cowardice blurred into the reality of their strength, and soon the enemy's confidence turned to arrogance. In the darkened halls of Persian tents, where opulence masked a layer of tension, Themistocles' deception took root. The Persian commanders, intoxicated by their own expectations of an easy victory, began to underestimate the cunning of their foe. They believed the whispers, the rumors of infighting among the Athenians, of a city on the verge of collapse. How blissfully ignorant they were, lost in their delusion. Themistocles' heart thundered with anticipation as he prepared for the inevitable clash at Salamis. As his fleet gathered, a subtle chill crept through the air, a signal that the moment of reckoning approached. Themistocles stood on the deck of his ship, the salty spray of the sea mingling with the fervor of his thoughts. He could almost taste the adrenaline, the sweet tang of impending confrontation. As night fell, the Athenian ships lay hidden, their outlines blending into the darkness. Themistocles made sure his men understood their roles, their hearts ignited by the belief that they were fighting not just for their city, but for the very essence of freedom. Each warrior felt the weight of his words, the promise of victory threaded through their spirits like a lifeline. At the break of dawn, the Persian fleet surged forward, blinded by the confidence that Themistocles had so carefully nurtured. They believed they had already won, but as the Athenian ships erupted from their hiding places, the shock on the faces of the Persian commanders was palpable. Themistocles' clever deception had blossomed into a fierce reality, and the Persian pride crumbled beneath the weight of their underestimation. The battle that followed was a cacophony of chaos, the clash of metal, the roar of men, and the cries of the wounded. Themistocles maneuvered his ships with precision, orchestrating every movement like a maestro conducting a symphony of war. With every victory, the tide of the battle shifted, and in the heat of conflict, he could feel the pulse of history throbbing around him. Yet, amidst the fury, a sense of doubt clawed at him. Was his deception too clever? Would the web he spun entangle him as well? But as he fought, he shoved those thoughts aside. He knew that the game of espionage required a steady hand, and with each strike against the Persians, he reaffirmed his place as the architect of their fate. Themistocles fought on, his heart racing, his mind sharp and focused. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, illuminating the chaos of the battlefield, he felt the tide turning not just in the waters of Salamis, but in the very essence of Athenian spirit. And the deception had ignited a fire that burned brightly in the hearts of his men, a fire that would not be easily extinguished. But even as victory seemed attainable, the shadow of misdirection lingered. Themistocles knew the game was far from over, and another challenge awaited just beyond the horizon. The echoes of the past and the whispers of the future converged, and in that moment he realized that the true battle was not just against the Persians, but within himself, a continued struggle for loyalty, strength, and the burden of leadership. On the precipice of chaos, the sun cast a fiery glow over the city-states of Greece, illuminating the stark contrasts between Sparta and Athens, two giants, fierce and proud, prepared to tread a treacherous path that would forever alter the landscape of their world. Whispers of alliances danced through the air, fragile threads of understanding, binding together the most formidable warriors and the most brilliant minds. Yet, beneath the surface of unity lay the simmering tensions that threatened to ignite into flames of war. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the rugged hills, the fervor of impending change gripped the hearts of the people. In the smoky taverns of Athens, discussions filled with hope and dread echoed through the night. Citizens spoke in hushed tones, eyes darting about as they debated the wisdom of their leaders. "Together we can forge a new destiny," one voice called out, brimming with conviction. "But can we trust the Spartans?" another countered, with a hint of fear. Each heart beat with the pulse of uncertainty, for in unity lay both strength and vulnerability. Meanwhile, in the austere barracks of Sparta, the air was thick with the sharp scent of sweat and determination. Young warriors trained relentlessly, their bodies honed into instruments of battle. The bond among them was palpable, forged through shared hardships and a singular purpose: to protect their homeland at all costs. Yet, even among them, the thoughts of alliances lingered like shadows at dusk. "The Athenians are soft," one Spartan scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "They can offer us silver and gold, but can they stand with us when the ground shakes?" Yet beneath that bravado there was a flicker of doubt. The stakes were too high to ignore. Days turned into weeks, and the fragile alliance took shape, a tapestry of hope stitched together with fear. Envoys traveled between cities, carrying messages heavy with the weight of expectation. Spartan generals and Athenian statesmen met in dimly lit rooms, their voices rising and falling like the tides. "Your strength is our shield," an Athenian implored, his eyes alight with fervor. "And your wisdom is our guide," replied a Spartan, his brow furrowed as he wrestled with the implications of their union. Each word hung in the air, thick with the promise of glory, yet threaded with the anxiety of betrayal. As autumn approached, a palpable tension enveloped the land. The once clear lines of rivalry blurred, creating a new landscape of alliances and ambitions. In the bustling streets of Athens, merchants hawked their wares amid discussions of the upcoming joint campaign. The atmosphere shimmered with excitement, but a chill ran down the spine of those who remembered the past. "What if they turn on us?" a woman whispered to her friend, her voice barely audible over the clamor. Yet the allure of unity was enticing. It beckoned like a siren, promising safety in numbers. In the Spartan encampments, the men prepared for what was to come. The clang of swords echoed against shields, forming a symphony of strength and resolve. As night fell, they gathered around flickering fires, sharing tales of heroism and valor. "Together, we will show the world the might of our alliance," a veteran shouted, his voice booming across the flames. Cheers erupted, But behind the bravado lingered a haunting question. Would they truly stand shoulder to shoulder in battle? The day of reckoning arrived, a moment charged with anticipation and dread. Spartan warriors lined up beside Athenian soldiers, their breaths mingling in the crisp morning air. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The proud hoplites of Sparta, with their gleaming armor, stood next to the agile Athenian infantry, their hearts beating as one. The ground seemed to tremble beneath their feet, resonating with the weight of their shared fate. Yet, lurking beneath the surface of this newfound unity was an undercurrent of doubt, a fear that the bonds forged in haste might fray when tested by the fires of war. As the battle horns sounded, a rush of adrenaline surged through their veins. The clash of metal rang out, drowning out the noise of fear and uncertainty. Side by side, Spartan and Athenian fought with unyielding ferocity, their spirits ignited by the hope of triumph. But in the chaos of war, trust would be their greatest weapon. Just when it seemed that victory was within reach, a sudden betrayal cut through the ranks. An Athenian leader faltered in his resolve, and the fragile alliance wavered. In that moment, the battlefield became a crucible of emotions. Fear surged, anger roared, and doubt crept in like a thief in the night. The Spartan warriors, their loyalty unwavering, watched with bated breath as their Athenian counterparts grappled with the choice between loyalty to their city and the bond they had forged. The air hung heavy with the weight of their shared history and the uncertain future that loomed ahead. Would they fight for one another, or would their alliance dissolve like mist before the dawn? The cries of battle echoed through the hills, each shout a reminder that unity bore both the thrill of shared purpose and the peril of betrayal. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, the two armies stood on the brink, each heartbeat a question. Would they rise as one or fall apart in the chaos of their own making? The world watched, holding its breath, waiting to see whether the bonds of alliance would yield to the fierceness of individual pride or hold steadfast against the storm brewing on the horizon. The air was thick with anticipation as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the docks. The sound of wood creaking and ropes clanging filled the space, a symphony of hope and desperation. Ships, each a vessel of dreams and determination, bobbed gently in the harbor, waiting to be called to greatness. More than just ships, they were a lifeline. 300 vessels that bore the weight of freedom, ready to sail into the unknown. Each ship was etched with the stories of those who dared to dream of liberation, and their hulls whispered of the battles ahead. Men and women, their faces etched with resolve, lined the shores. They were the families torn apart by tyranny and the warriors who had fought for every inch of land they could claim. The air was electric with fervor as leaders gathered, their voices rising above the din, calling for unity. Every man and woman knew that this moment would echo through the annals of history, forging a path toward a new dawn. Their hearts raced, fueled by the fire of a shared dream, to break the chains of oppression and sail toward a horizon filled with hope. As the sun painted the sky a fiery red, the leaders rallied the throngs. We gather not just for ourselves, but for those who cannot. For the generations that will come after us, we do this. Their words ignited flames of passion within the crowd. Eyes glistened with tears of both fear and determination. It was a call to arms, one that resonated deep within the souls of those present. Behind the scenes, shipwrights and sailors worked tirelessly. Each ship was a testament to human ingenuity and resilience, crafted with care and precision. They were fitted with sails that billowed like the very flags of freedom that flew high above. The men climbed the masts, their hearts pounding, securing the rigging that would carry them through storms and uncertainties. It was a labor of love, each knot tied with hope, each plank laid with a promise of a better tomorrow. The cries of seagulls echoed overhead, a reminder of the uncharted waters that lay beyond. As night fell, lanterns flickered to life, illuminating the faces of the brave souls gathered. They shared stories of loss and longing, dreams and desires. Each tale wove an invisible thread, binding them together in a tapestry rich with emotion. They were not just a fleet, they were a family, forged in the fires of adversity. Then came the moment, the signal to embark. A tremendous roar erupted from the crowd, a surge of energy that seemed to ripple through the very earth beneath their feet. The ships stirred, the water lapping eagerly at their hulls, as if beckoning them to venture forth. Hearts raced as loved ones held one another tightly, knowing that this moment marked a line between the past and a hopeful future. Mothers embraced their sons, fathers clasping their children's shoulders with pride, all filled with unspoken fears and dreams. The first ship, a stout vessel named Freedom's Call, began to pull away from the dock. It was a moment frozen in time. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows behind them, as the ship slipped into the open sea. The crowd fell silent, their hearts synchronized with the rhythm of the waves. A collective breath held in hope and trepidation. Each ship followed suit, a magnificent parade of defiance against the dark clouds of oppression looming over them. Among the crew were seasoned sailors and young dreamers, each carrying a different story yet united in purpose. The salty air filled their lungs, invigorating them, while the sound of the waves crashing against the hull became a heartbeat, a promise of adventure. For some, the sea had always called to them, while others faced the vastness with fear. Yet, as they sailed into the unknown, they took comfort in the knowledge that they were not alone. They were bound by a mission that transcended individual fears. The stars began to twinkle overhead, bright pinpricks in a vast canvas of darkness. It was a reminder of the countless souls who had come before them, those who had dared to dream of freedom. As they sailed deeper into the night, the enormity of their task settled upon them like a heavy cloak. It wasn't merely about reaching a destination, it was about the journey itself, the sacrifices made, and the lives that would be changed forever. But lurking in the shadows of the vast ocean was the ever-present threat of the enemy. Unseen forces plotted and schemed, their eyes fixed on the fleet that dared to challenge their grip on power. The air crackled with tension, a storm brewing on the horizon. The sailors felt it, a palpable unease that wrapped around them like fog. Every creak of the ship became a reminder of the danger that lay ahead. As the moon cast a silver glow upon the waters, the fleet pressed on. It was a sight to behold, ships moving in unity, a collective force against tyranny. The wind filled the sails, and for a moment hope soared higher than the tallest mast. They were more than just individuals. They were a force of nature, an unstoppable wave determined to crash against the walls of oppression. The horizon beckoned, a promise of land where dreams could take root, but with every passing hour, the weight of uncertainty grew heavier. Would they reach their destination? Would the sacrifices made be in vain? Yet, in the depths of their hearts, they carried the flame of hope, a light that could not be extinguished. Their resolve was stronger than the fear that threatened to engulf them. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, the fleet continued its journey into history. Each ship was a symbol, each sailor a guardian of freedom. Bound together by their courage, they sailed into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The ocean stretched out before them, vast and unpredictable, but within their hearts lay an unwavering faith. They were destined to leave a mark on the world, one that would resonate for generations to come. And so, with every wave that crashed against their hulls, they embraced their fate, knowing full well that their story was just beginning. A thunderous roar erupted as the Persian fleet gathered at the shores of the Hellespont, the waters churning like a battlefield before a great clash. The sun cast long shadows on the faces of the warriors, where hope and fear battled for dominance. There stood Xerxes, his presence larger than life, determined to conquer the Aegean and carve his name into the annals of history. His eyes sparkled with ambition, reflecting the vast sea before him, a canvas upon which he would paint the strokes of his empire. The plan was audacious, yet brimming with the promise of glory. Xerxes envisioned a naval supremacy that would put all rivals to shame, a force so mighty that even the bravest of Greek warriors would tremble at the mere whisper of his name. With a swift motion, he summoned his advisors, the air thick with urgency and anticipation. Each man felt the weight of their king's vision settle upon their shoulders like a heavy cloak. As they gathered, the flickering torches illuminated the anxious faces of the strategists, their hearts racing in unison with the pulse of the ocean. They were aware of the stakes. The Athenian navy, fierce and relentless, posed a formidable challenge. And yet, the Persian resolve was unyielding. Xerxes laid out his ambitious strategy, detailing how the vast Persian fleet, with its many ships gliding through the waves like swift predators, would secure control over key maritime routes. The sound of crashing waves echoed in their ears, a constant reminder of the power they sought. Each ship was more than just wood and sails. They were extensions of Xerxes' will, crafted to dominate the seas. His voice, rich and commanding, outlined the plans to fortify naval bases, replenish supplies, and train sailors until they moved as one, a singular entity propelled by a shared dream of conquest. The council room filled with tension as the men exchanged anxious glances. The thought of facing the nimble Athenian triremes sent shivers down their spines. But Xerxes' conviction was infectious. He described how the Persian forces would outmaneuver their enemies, striking from unexpected angles, turning the tides of battle in their favor. He painted vivid pictures of victory, of ships looming large against the horizon, Persian banners billowing proudly in the wind. Yet whispers of doubt crept amidst the fervor. Some murmured about the Greeks' uncanny ability to unite against a common foe, about their fierce determination that had carried them through countless battles. But Xerxes silenced them with a steely gaze, proclaiming that despair was a luxury they could not afford. With fervor, he roused their spirits, stirring a fire in their hearts that rivaled the sun setting over the distant hills. As the preparations moved into full swing, an intricate web of alliances unfolded. Xerxes sought the aid of other nations, promising riches and glory to those who would stand by his side. The waves of the Aegean whispered secrets of betrayal and camaraderie, as the hands of fate spun stories of uncertain loyalty. The Persian navy began to swell, a mighty armada that shimmered against the azure sky, each ship a testament to the king's relentless ambition. But in the shadows, the Athenian commanders plotted their own counter-strategy. They observed the colossal Persian fleet with a mixture of awe and anxiety, aware that the fate of their homeland rested upon their shoulders. The tension between the two forces crackled like static in the air, the inevitable clash looming closer with each passing moment. As the day of reckoning approached, Xerxes stood upon the prow of his flagship, a symbol of strength and resolve. The salty breeze tousled his hair, but he was undeterred, his heart beating in rhythm with the thrumming of the oars beneath him. Flashes of lightning streaked across the sky, mirroring the storm of emotions roiling within him. Fear, excitement, and an exhilarating thirst for conquest. The fleet surged forward, a powerful wave of wood and men gliding toward the battle that awaited them. Tension hung thick in the air, a palpable force that threatened to consume all who dared to approach. Xerxes' heart raced as he envisioned the moment of triumph, the sweet taste of victory on his lips as he imagined the Athenian ships sinking beneath the waves, swallowed by the very sea that had once belonged to them. Yet in the distance, a flicker of rebellion sparked among the Greeks. They too were preparing for war, their resolve hardening like steel. The battle cries of their warriors echoed through the valleys, a haunting melody that warned of the bloodshed to come. The Persian strategy evolved, adapting to the shifting tides of uncertainty. Xerxes ordered the construction of bridges, daring and ambitious, to ensure swift movement of troops from land to sea. His vision of naval supremacy became an intricate dance of logistics and strategy, a ballet of ships and soldiers choreographed to perfection. Each decision weighed heavily upon him, like a crown of thorns. In the throes of this monumental endeavor, the stakes escalated, ships were launched, men were trained, and the Persian spirit soared higher with every victory in the build-up to battle. The ocean swirled in anticipation, teasing the edges of fate as Xerxes' plan became a living, breathing entity. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, as if the very heavens foretold the epic struggle that was about to unfold. With every heartbeat, the anticipation grew, filling the air with electric tension. The Persian fleet, a formidable force, was ready, and the waves whispered secrets of an uncertain future. As the sun dipped lower, illuminating the horizon with its last golden rays, Xerxes stood at the helm, ready to confront destiny itself, as the first echoes of war began to ripple across the waters, drawing closer, relentless, and powerful. The time for battle was nigh, and with it, the clash of two worlds awaited, a storm on the very edge of the horizon. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the Aegean Sea. It painted the waves with glimmers of light, yet beneath the surface, a tempest brewed. On the horizon, ships began to emerge, their sails billowing like the wings of a great flock of birds preparing for an impending storm. Tension crackled in the air, thick enough to taste, as the great naval forces of Persia and Greece drew closer to the fateful convergence that would shape the future of nations. Among the ships was the mighty Persian fleet, a colossal armada stretching as far as the eye could see. The vessels, sleek and powerful, housed thousands of men, their faces set with grim determination. The scent of salt mingled with the aroma of sweat and fear. Xerxes the king stood at the bow of his flagship, surveying his vast forces. His heart, though hardened by power, quickened at the thought of the impending clash. His voice rang out over the waves, rallying his soldiers with promises of glory and conquest. The very sea seemed to tremble at his command. Not far from this impending doom, the Greek ships were gathering, a smaller but fiercely united force. Here the air was filled with the sounds of encouragement and strategy. Each sailor, whether a seasoned warrior or a novice, understood the weight of what lay ahead. The wooden hulls of their triremes creaked and groaned, mirroring the anxious hearts of the men aboard. The leaders, Themistocles at the forefront, gathered under the shade of a makeshift awning, poring over maps, their brows furrowed in concentration. They knew they were outnumbered, and the odds were grim. Yet, within the confines of their ships, a fire ignited, a fierce determination that refused to be extinguished. As the two forces inched closer, the mood shifted from anticipation to palpable anxiety. The Greeks were aware of what was at stake. Each man recalled the tales of their ancestors, the heroes of old who had fought against insurmountable odds. Memories of past victories washed over them like waves crashing against the shore. The Battle of Marathon echoed in their minds, a reminder that courage could defy even the mightiest of foes. With every breath, they drew strength from the knowledge that this battle was not just for their lives, but for the very essence of their freedom. The wind picked up, stirring the waters and tugging at the ships like a restless child. As the fleets neared, the horizon darkened with the smoke of the coming clash. The Grecian sails flickered in the dimming light, their colors blending with the fiery spirit of the men aboard. Yet, within that courage, there lingered doubt. Would they have the strength to stand against the Persian tide? On the Persian side, men of diverse lands and cultures filled the ships, united under Xerxes' command, yet each carrying their own fears and dreams. The realization swept through them. The weight of their king's ambition rested on their shoulders. They were not merely soldiers, they were part of a grand scheme that threatened to sweep away the very fabric of Greek society. Whispers of rebellion, of courage, and of uncertainty flitted through their ranks. As the sun dipped lower, closing the day in a fiery embrace, the sky transformed into a canvas of reds and purples, mirroring the blood that would soon stain the waters. A silence fell over the two fleets, a momentary pause before the storm. The echoes of distant drums and clashing weapons began to pulse through the air, igniting an electric anticipation. The sound resonated deep within the hearts of the warriors, a call to arms, a reminder of the glory that awaited them, or the death that might come. Themistocles stood at the helm of his ship, his mind racing. He had played countless strategies in his mind, envisioning the possible outcomes of this battle. Would they outsmart the Persians in their own game? As the ships drifted closer, he could almost hear the heartbeat of the ocean, a throbbing reminder of what lay ahead. His breath caught in his throat. Images of fallen comrades, of the land he loved, flashed before his eyes. Then, a shout rang out, a cry that shattered the tense silence. A signal. The moment had arrived. The Persian fleet surged forward, a cacophony of movement as the Greeks responded in kind, a battle cry rising from their ranks. The waves churned beneath them, and the air thickened with the promise of violence and valor. The front line of triremes collided like thunder, wooden hulls splintering against one another as men fought not just for victory but for survival. Swords clashed, and the cries of men filled the air, a mixture of fear, rage, and desperate hope. Each moment felt stretched, time bending, as if it were holding its breath, waiting to see which side would claim the day. The sun continued to set, now a fiery orb sinking into the horizon, casting long shadows over the chaos. The darkness loomed, a portent of the storm about to unleash its wrath. For those on the ships, this was not just a battle, it was a turning point, a moment in history that would echo through the ages. As the ships converged at Salamis, the waves roared in response, and with it came the realization that the outcome was uncertain. With every clash and every shout, the storm deepened, swirling around them, a whirlpool of fate drawing them inexorably toward the heart-pounding clash that would define their legacies. And as the first blood was spilled, the true depth of their resolve would be tested, and the world would hold its breath, teetering on the edge of destiny. The air hung heavy in Athens, thick with an unease that crept into the bones of its people. And the sun, usually a warm embrace, felt like a harsh spotlight, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper warnings. Streets once filled with laughter and the scent of fresh bread now echoed with the heavy boots of soldiers and the distant rumble of cannons. The city was a caged bird, flapping desperately as the bars of war closed in. In the heart of this ancient city, the Acropolis stood like a guardian, its marble columns a testament to centuries of resilience. But even the proud Parthenon could not shield its citizens from the encroaching darkness of invasion. As news of the enemy's approach spread, fear wrapped around Athens like a tightening noose. Families gathered in hushed circles, their eyes reflecting the flickering lights of oil lamps. Faces pale and drawn, they spoke in whispers, sharing tales of bravery and escape. Yet the weight of uncertainty hung in the air. Among those families was Eleni, a mother of two, whose spirit glimmered like a candle fighting against the wind. She looked at her children, their innocent eyes wide with questions. "Will the soldiers come here?" her youngest asked, his voice trembling. Eleni knelt before him, cupping his face in her hands. "We must be brave, my love," she whispered, trying to infuse her words with courage she didn't entirely feel. The truth was a shadow lurking in the corners of her heart. She knew they might have to leave everything behind. As the days passed, the atmosphere thickened, each moment stretching like a tightrope ready to snap. The distant sounds of artillery grew louder, filling the streets with dread. The city was a pressure cooker, and the people inside it were about to boil over. In cafes and markets, conversations turned from daily life to desperate plans for evacuation. Hushed tones replaced laughter, and what once felt like home now seemed like a prison. The government issued orders for evacuation, a decision that sent shockwaves through the city. Panic set in. How could they leave? Their lives, their memories, their identities, all were woven into the very fabric of Athens. Yet, survival was an instinct that surged within them like a wildfire. Eleni gathered her belongings, each item a bittersweet reminder of a life she had cherished. As she packed, her heart raced with the thought of abandoning her home, the echoes of her children's laughter ringing in her ears. On the eve of evacuation, the city transformed into a haunting tableau of despair and hope. Lanterns flickered like stars against the encroaching darkness, illuminating the faces of those preparing to leave. Streets that had once been vibrant were now filled with the hurried footsteps of families clutching small bundles of their lives. Among them, Eleni felt a sense of camaraderie with her neighbors, each of them united by fear, yet bound by a deep-seated love for their home. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a sense of finality settled over the city. The last whispers of daylight faded, leaving a chilling silence that seemed to swallow the world. Suddenly, the loud boom of cannon fire shattered the stillness, a grim reminder that the enemy was closer than ever. A collective gasp echoed through the crowd as fear rippled like a wave. Eleni's heart raced, her instincts screaming to flee, but where could they go? Once the decision to evacuate was made, chaos erupted. People rushed to the docks, their hearts pounding like drums of war. The Athenians were not just leaving a city, they were leaving a part of themselves behind. A bittersweet ache that knotted in their throats. Eleni clutched her children tightly as they wove through the throng, each face around them a portrait of anguish blurred with determination. The streets were alive with a pulsing energy, a desperate rhythm that echoed the fight for survival. The docks were a cacophony of shouts and cries, the air thick with salt and fear. Boats bobbed anxiously at the shoreline, a lifeline for those daring to escape the clutches of war. Eleni felt a surge of emotion as she watched families board, some carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs, others weighed down with cherished possessions. She whispered a silent prayer, a plea for safety, not just for her own children, but for all those brave souls around her. The first boat pulled away, cutting through the water, leaving behind a city teetering on the brink of destruction. Eleni's heart ached at the sight, a part of her longing to reach out, to hold on to the familiar sights of her beloved Athens. With every passing moment, she felt the pull of the city grow stronger, an invisible thread tying her to the very ground she had walked upon since childhood. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air, a mother separated from her child, a heart-wrenching moment that sent shivers down Eleni's spine. She turned to her children, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Stay close," she commanded, her voice firm despite the tremor in her heart. The tide of people surged forward, a tide of uncertainty dragging them all toward an unknown future. As they boarded the last boat, a weight settled heavily on Eleni's shoulders. The vessel rocked beneath them, and she glanced back at Athens one last time. A city that had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, now standing at the precipice of destruction. Tears welled in her eyes as the city began to shrink, shadows of its towering structures fading into the mist. The horizon stretched before them, a blank canvas of what was yet to come, but the ache in her chest remained, a reminder of what was lost and what was still to be fought for. With each stroke of the oars, the distance between the boat and Athens grew, yet the city lingered in their hearts. The horizon drew them forward into the unknown, a blend of hope and despair intertwined. As night fell, the stars emerged, shining brightly against the dark, just as the spirit of Athens would continue to glow within them, even in the face of such peril. In that moment, amidst the chaos and confusion, one truth remained clear: the fight was far from over. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the vast expanse of the battlefield. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, their hearts pounding with a mix of dread and exhilaration. The air crackled with tension, a charged atmosphere thick with the scent of sweat and anticipation. In the distance, Xerxes, the great Persian king, sat atop a grand, ornate throne, ruling not just with iron, but with an unshakable confidence that bordered on arrogance. He was a man whose ambition knew no bounds, a ruler who believed that the mere sight of his vast army would send shivers down the spines of his enemies. As Xerxes gazed down upon the battlefield, a stirring sense of invincibility washed over him. His forces were immense, an army of over 1 million strong, a sight to behold. Waves of soldiers stretched endlessly, shimmering like an ocean of bronze and steel. He had assembled the mightiest forces from across his empire, each contingent heralded as the epitome of strength. The ground trembled beneath them, a subtle reminder of their shared purpose. to crush the Greeks and expand the Persian Empire to the edges of the known world. But the Greeks, though outnumbered, stood resolute. Spartan warriors, fierce and disciplined, had come to symbolize defiance. Their leaders, with eyes ablaze, rallied their troops, igniting a spirit that refused to be extinguished. The fiery words of Leonidas echoed through the ranks, each syllable a lifeline that bound the men to their cause. They would stand their ground, defy the odds, and fight for their homeland, their families, their freedom. As the battle drums thundered, signaling the start of the conflict, Xerxes felt a surge of pride. He was a king destined for greatness, or so he believed. Nothing could stand in his way. Victory was a mere formality. The vision of glory danced in his mind, the stories of his conquests echoing through the ages. He imagined the bards singing of his victories, the tales of his might passed down through generations. He envisioned the cities of Greece, their walls crumbling under the weight of his triumph. But amidst the clamor of war, shadows lurked. A few voices whispered caution, their warnings drowned out by the roar of the crowd. "Do not underestimate your enemies," they urged, but Xerxes brushed aside their fears, convinced that his numbers alone would spell doom for the Greeks. He clutched his ornate scepter, its weight a reflection of his power, and dismissed the doubt that clawed at the edges of his mind. The first clash of swords echoed like thunder, shaking the very ground they fought upon. Persian archers unleashed their arrows, a dark rain descending upon the Greek ranks. But the defenders stood firm, their shields locked together, a wall of resilience against the onslaught. The sound of steel against steel rang out, a harsh symphony of chaos that filled the air, drowning Xerxes' fantasies of grandeur in the stark reality of battle. With each passing moment, the tide of war became a living, breathing entity. The battlefield morphed into a gruesome dance where valor and desperation intertwined. Xerxes watched the struggle unfold, his gaze flickering between the battlefield and his grand throne. The vision of glory began to waver as if the very gods were toying with his fate. His confidence faltered, yet he refused to show it. A king must appear strong, even in the face of looming uncertainty. Then came the moment that would haunt him. In the midst of the chaos, a Senegalese warrior fought fiercely, his movements a blend of grace and brutality. He took down Persian soldiers with an intensity that seemed fueled by divine vengeance. The sight of his prowess sent ripples of unease through Xerxes' heart. Each fallen soldier weighed heavily on his conscience. But he forced himself to remain stoic, a mask of control in a storm of doubt. But doubt is a cunning foe. As the battle raged on, Xerxes' once unshakable confidence began to crumble like the very walls he sought to conquer. In the depths of his heart, he felt the stirrings of fear, a feeling unfamiliar to a ruler who had dominated for so long. The realization that sheer numbers did not guarantee victory clawed at him from within. He glanced at his generals, their faces a mix of determination and unease. They looked to him for direction, but how could he lead them when his own heart trembled in uncertainty? Amidst the clash of weapons, the cries of pain reverberated like a haunting echo. The battlefield transformed into a tapestry of blood and valor, where the tales of heroism intermingled with the cries of despair. The Greeks fought like lions defending their pride, their resolve a fire that blazed against the oncoming storm. With every fallen foe, the momentum began to shift, as if the very spirit of the land had rallied to their cause. Xerxes' thoughts raced. Was it too late? Would history remember him as a conqueror or as a fool? The once clear vision of victory waned, giving way to the chilling realization that overconfidence could lead to devastation. In a desperate bid to regain control, he unleashed his elite cavalry, believing they would turn the tide. Yet, even as they charged, the seeds of doubt had already been sown. They were met with fierce resistance, a wall of defiance that cut through the heart of his grand army. The clash intensified, and Xerxes felt the weight of his decisions bearing down on him. His grand ambitions, once vivid and exhilarating, now felt like a shroud cloaking him in darkness. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the battlefield, the echoes of war transformed into a haunting dirge, a haunting reminder that no empire, however vast, could withstand the fury of a united people fighting for their freedom. Xerxes clenched his fists, the tension palpable in the air. He was a king on the precipice of ruin, and all that he had built hung in the balance. The cries of the dying mingled with the clamor of swords, a symphony of chaos that would mark the moment when overconfidence met its reckoning. As the shadows lengthened across the battlefield, the Persian king faced a choice: embrace the chaos unfolding before him, or cling to the remnants of his shattered dreams. The battle surged forward, a tempest of fury and despair, with no clear end in sight. The ground churned beneath the feet of warriors, a testament to their unyielding spirit. Xerxes could feel the tide turning, could feel the very essence of his fate shifting in the thick air. Victory was slipping through his fingers, and he could only watch as the dreams of glory he had so fervently chased began to dissolve into the night like the fading light of the sun. As dusk settled like a velvet cloak over the ancient world, a palpable tension crackled in the air. The sun slipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the marble columns of Athens, where the ideals of democracy whispered through the bustling agora. Just across the water, the vast expanse of the Persian Empire sprawled like an untamed beast, its heart beating with the iron hand of despotism. In this moment, two civilizations stood on the precipice of conflict, their beliefs locked in a fierce embrace, each unwilling to yield. In the streets of Athens, vibrant discussions sparked like wildfire. Citizens gathered, voices rising in a chorus of passion and conviction. They spoke of freedom, the right to vote, a voice that mattered, each word a testament to the very essence of what it meant to be Greek. They celebrated the mind and the soul, exalting the glory of man and the beauty of reason. Philosophers like Socrates and Plato roamed these streets, their ideas echoing against the stones, igniting minds with visions of a just society. The very air was alive with the thrill of possibility. Yet, across the Aegean Sea, the Persian court was cloaked in opulence and fear. The grand palaces of Persepolis, adorned with gold and intricate carvings, stood as a stark reminder of the relentless power of King Xerxes. Here, loyalty was demanded and silence was golden. The king ruled with an iron fist, his subjects mere shadows of the grand ideals cherished by the Greeks. His word was law, dissent was crushed swiftly, leaving no trace but the whispers of those who dared to dream of freedom. The contrast was staggering, a celebration of thought and a graveyard of ambition. On the battlefield, the clash of these two worlds began to unfold, a tumultuous storm brewing on the horizon. The Greeks, united under a banner of freedom, faced the might of the Persian Empire, where an army of thousands marched, a relentless tide moving toward the shores of Hellas. The sound of boots drumming against the earth echoed like a war cry, reverberating through the valleys and hills, instilling dread and determination alike. Each soldier, whether Greek or Persian, felt the weight of their culture on their shoulders, pulling them toward their respective fates. As the sun rose on Marathon, a palpable fear gripped the hearts of the Athenians. Would they stand against this juggernaut of despotism? The Persian forces, led by their commanding generals, were an indomitable presence, seemingly invincible. Yet within the hearts of the Greeks burned a fierce flame. They fought not just for territory or power, but for their very right to exist as free men. That day, courage would clash with tyranny, and the outcome would ripple through the ages. The air was thick with anticipation as the two armies faced off. The Greeks, though outnumbered, formed a tight-knit phalanx, their shields interlocked like a wall of determination. They could hear the Persian war cries echoing across the plains, a cacophony of sound that sent shivers down their spines. But even in this moment of fear, hope flickered like a candle in the dark. They remembered the stories of their ancestors, heroes who stood bravely against tyranny. They channeled their ancestors' bravery, their own hearts pounding in unison. And then the moment of truth arrived. The call to advance shattered the silence. The Greeks surged forward, a wave of defiance crashing against the Persian might. Clashing swords, the cries of men, the thud of bodies hitting the ground, chaos erupted. It was not just a battle of swords, it was a battle of ideals. Here, on this blood-soaked battlefield, the heart of democracy faced the heart of despotism. Each Greek soldier fought not just for survival, but for the very essence of what it meant to be free. In that brutal melee, emotions ran high. Fear intertwined with bravery, the thrill of battle clouded by the stark reality of death. Each life lost was not merely a statistic. It was a story cut short, a dream extinguished. And yet, amid the chaos, something miraculous happened. The Greeks, fueled by their ideals and united in purpose, began to push back. The Persian lines faltered as they faced an unyielding tide of men whose hearts beat with the fervor of freedom. As the dust settled on the battlefield of Marathon, victory was not just a word. It was a promise. The Greeks had held their ground, sending shockwaves through the Persian Empire, a testament to what courage and conviction could achieve. But the clash of cultures was far from over. The embers of conflict ignited a fierce determination within the Persian ranks, a call to vengeance that would not be ignored. Back in the magnificent halls of Persepolis, the whispers of the defeated reached Xerxes, a king enraged, a despot unwilling to accept failure. He would gather his forces, his ambitions ignited by the flames of revenge. The Greeks had tasted victory, but they could not rest. The storm was far from over. The principles of freedom and the chains of tyranny would meet again, both sides preparing for the next chapter in their clash. And so, as the sun set on that fateful day, a sense of foreboding mingled with hope. The pages of history, soaked in the blood of brave souls, turned with a certainty that the conflict was far from finished, and the ideals of Greece clashed violently against the iron will of Persia, forging a narrative that would echo through time, a story of resilience and ambition, a testament to the enduring struggle between freedom and oppression. What lay ahead remained uncertain, but one thing was crystal clear: this was only the beginning. The sky was still cloaked in darkness, the first whispers of dawn barely brushing against the horizon, when the sharp clang of metal began to pierce the silence. Soldiers shuffled about like restless phantoms, their faces shadowed and grim, each man lost in the depths of his own thoughts. The air hung heavy with the scent of sweat and the biting tang of iron, a reminder of what lay ahead. This was not just another day. It was the morning of battle, and the world was holding its breath. In the camp, fires flickered uncertainly, casting ghostly shadows that danced across the tense faces of those who would soon march into chaos. A chill ran through the air, as if nature itself sensed the impending clash of swords and shields. Each man took inventory of his armor and weapon. The familiar routine now turned sacred. They checked their swords, polished gleaming blades that had tasted blood before and would again. The sound of steel sliding against leather was almost musical, yet it resonated with a foreboding chord that echoed in their hearts. In the quiet moments before dawn, the enormity of the day settled on them like a weight. They could hear the distant rumble of their enemy, a dark tide gathering at the edges of the world, ready to surge forward. No one spoke much. Words seemed insufficient to encapsulate the mix of fear and determination that pulsed through their veins. A young soldier named Thomas, barely out of boyhood, stood watching the embers of the dying fire, his heart racing. This was his first battle, and a mixture of excitement and terror bubbled within him like a raging storm. He felt the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders, the stories of those who had fought before him echoing in his mind. Across the camp, seasoned warriors exchanged knowing glances, their eyes glinting with the memories of past conflicts. They were veterans of blood and fire, each scar a testament to survival, each whispered prayer a plea for protection. They huddled together, their breath visible in the cool morning air, sharing tales of luck and valor. But beneath their bravado lay an undercurrent of dread. They were acutely aware that no battle ever goes as planned. The very ground they stood upon had soaked in the blood of countless soldiers, friends, brothers, lost to the ruthless hands of war. As the first rays of sunlight began to illuminate the landscape, a bugle's sharp call shattered the stillness. It echoed across the camp like a thunderclap, summoning the troops from their contemplations. Men straightened, adrenaline coursing through them as they grabbed their weapons and moved as one toward the assembly point. Each step felt heavy with purpose. The weight of destiny pressed down like an iron cloak. The clang of armor harmonized with their heartbeat, creating a rhythm that synced with the pulse of the earth itself. And Thomas found himself standing shoulder to shoulder with men he barely knew. Yet a bond began to form, an unspoken understanding that they were all in this together, united by fear and hope. They gripped their weapons tightly, fingers slick with sweat. Their hearts thundered in their chests, drowning out all other sounds. In that moment, Thomas felt alive in a way he had never felt before, caught between the thrill of impending action and the chill of knowing that some might not return. The commanders strode among them, their presence commanding and formidable. They offered words of encouragement, rallying their men with the promise of glory and honor. "Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for our families, our homes," one shouted, his voice rising above the crowd. The men cheered, a wave of fervor crashing over them, but deep down, they knew that glory was a fleeting illusion, one that could vanish in the blink of an eye. As the sun climbed higher, illuminating the battlefield, the soldiers began to form ranks. They moved into position, the ground beneath them trembling in anticipation. The distant sound of hooves grew louder, a rolling thunder that signaled the approach of their foes. The enemy was out there just beyond the ridge, waiting, watching. The tension in the air became almost tangible, thick as fog, wrapping tightly around the hearts of every man present. Sweat dripped from Thomas's brow as he adjusted his grip on his sword. He could see the enemy banners fluttering in the wind, a stark reminder that each one of them was a living target. Fear clawed at the edges of his mind, yet he stood firm, reminding himself of the reasons he fought. The faces of his mother and sister flashed through his thoughts, their smiles a beacon of hope in the storm of uncertainty. Then came the moment when all pretense of calm vanished. A war cry erupted from the enemy ranks, a sound so primal it sent shivers racing down his spine. It was a call to arms, a summons to chaos, and in that instant, all doubts were obliterated. The clash of metal against metal, the screams of men, the cries of horses, all these would soon fill the air. The soldiers braced themselves, hearts pounding, breaths quickening. As the first wave of attackers surged forward, a primal instinct took over. Thomas's body moved almost without thought, years of training kicking in with fierce clarity. He felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins, electrifying and terrifying all at once. Each heartbeat echoed a countdown. This moment, this day, would define them all. The ground beneath them no longer felt stable. It was a ticking time bomb. The sun shone brightly, casting long shadows across the battlefield, a stark contrast to the dark thoughts swirling in their minds. With one final breath, one last flicker of fear, Thomas charged forward, joining the surge of men rushing into the fray. The world around him faded, replaced by the cacophony of war, a wild symphony of courage and desperation. He would fight for his life, for the brotherhood forged in the fires of uncertainty, and he would wield his sword like a promise. The morning of battle had come, and with it, a storm that would change everything. The morning sun barely broke through the heavy clouds, casting a muted light over the battlefield. A thick fog hung low, shrouding the ground in a ghostly veil. The stillness was deafening, an unsettling calm that presaged the chaos to come. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, their breaths visible in the chilly air, hearts pounding with a mixture of dread and anticipation. For them, the day had arrived. The day their lives would change forever. A single bird chirped, cutting through the heavy silence. It flitted from branch to branch, a carefree creature unaware of the gravity that loomed over the men below. Then came a distant rumble, a sound so profound that it sent tremors through the ground beneath their feet. It was the sound of drums, war drums, calling them to rise. The rhythm echoed in their chests, a stark reminder of the reality they were about to face. Lieutenant James Harper stood at the forefront, his fingers trembling around the hilt of his sword. He was just 23, yet the weight of command bore down on him like an anvil. He glanced sideways, catching the eye of Private Thomas, who was mere weeks out of school, his youthful face a mask of fear and determination. They exchanged a nod, a silent promise that whatever happened today, they would face it together. As the fog began to lift, shadows emerged. Ghostly figures of men clad in uniforms that bore the marks of countless battles. They were the enemy, and the sight of them sent a shiver down Harper's spine. The tension was thick enough to slice through, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. The battleground was now an expansive canvas, painted with the emotions of every soldier present, fear, bravery, and the overwhelming desire to protect their own. Then it came, the piercing sound of a horn, a call to arms that shattered the stillness like glass. It cut through the haze of uncertainty, paving the way for chaos. The soldiers surged forward, a wave of humanity moving as one, driven by adrenaline and sheer will. The ground shook beneath their feet, and a primal roar erupted from the ranks. It was a sound that echoed through time, a call that resonated in the hearts of all who would hear it for generations. As the two sides collided, the battlefield transformed into a cacophony of steel and flesh. The clash of swords rang out like a horrific symphony, each strike punctuated by cries of pain and valor. Harper felt the adrenaline surge through him as he swung his sword, his movements instinctual, driven by the training and memories of those who had come before him. In the fray, time twisted and turned. Seconds felt like hours. He glanced to his left, where Private Thomas struggled to fend off an enemy soldier. Harper's heart raced as he fought his way through the chaos to reach him, their eyes locking in a moment of shared fear. But it was not just fear that coursed through the men. There was also a fierce determination, an unbreakable bond forged in the fires of loyalty. Each soldier was fueled by the love for their comrades, a desire to protect the brothers in arms who had become family. As they fought, they became part of something larger than themselves, a movement, a legacy, a history that was being written in blood and courage. Suddenly, the air filled with the sickening scent of gunpowder and smoke. Explosions rocked the ground, sending plumes of dirt and debris into the air. Harper stumbled, momentarily blinded but instinctively pressed on, driven by the cries of his fellow soldiers. He could hear the sound of horses screaming, men shouting, and the sharp report of rifles discharging. Each moment was a dance with death, and Harper felt the specter of fate hovering just beyond reach. In the midst of the chaos, a chance encounter jolted him from his reverie. He saw a figure lying on the ground, a fallen soldier, blood pooling around him like a dark halo. Harper's heart sank. This was not just a battle, this was a war. Memories of laughter shared and dreams exchanged flooded his mind. Every face of every friend he had lost flashed before him, igniting a flame of rage deep within. The fog of war thickened, and Harper swung his sword with renewed vigor. He fought not just for survival, but to honor those who had fallen. Each blow became a tribute, a testament to the sacrifices made. He could feel the weight of every life lost pressing down on him, transforming his fear into an unyielding resolve. The tide of battle ebbed and flowed, every moment stretching and compressing in a relentless cycle of hope and despair. Harper became a blur of motion, his senses heightened, every sound amplified. He could hear the cries of his comrades, the lament of the wounded, and the chilling absence of those who would never return. With each passing second, the stakes grew higher, and the reality of loss loomed larger. In the midst of the fray, a chilling cry broke through the chaos, a cry that sent a shiver down the spine of every man present. It was the unmistakable sound of a general's order, rallying the troops. The enemy was regrouping, preparing for a counterattack that could turn the tide against them. Harper's heart raced as he grasped the urgency of the moment, the realization that the outcome hung by a thread. With a fierce determination, he rallied his men, their faces grim but resolute. They stood together, bodies battered but spirits unbroken, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The initial engagement was only the beginning. They knew that the fight was far from over. As the fog began to lift, revealing a stark landscape of turmoil and destruction, they braced themselves for the storm that was yet to come. The fires of war blazed brightly on the horizon, and they would not back down. The echoes of their bravery would ring out, a haunting reminder of the courage found in the face of overwhelming odds. The storm raged on, a symphony of chaos that echoed across the churning sea. That day, the air was thick with tension, as the fate of fleets rested in the hands of those who commanded them, individuals whose decisions could turn the tide of battle or seal their destinies forever. Commanders were more than just leaders. They were the heartbeat of the fleet, each pulse sending waves of hope or despair through the ships and their crews. In the midst of this tempest, Captain James Cook stood resolute at the helm of the HMS Endeavour. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, scanned the horizon, anticipating the unknown. Cook was not merely a navigator, he was a visionary, driven by an insatiable hunger for discovery and understanding. His legendary voyages to the South Pacific were etched in history, but beneath the accolades lay the weight of responsibility. Every man aboard looked to him not only for guidance, but for a glimpse of hope amid the dark waters. On the other side of the world, Admiral Horatio Nelson faced his own storm, one of a different kind. The Battle of Trafalgar loomed ahead, and with it the chance to prove that a single individual could alter the course of history. Nelson, with his indomitable spirit and strategic brilliance, rallied his men with a message that resonated in their very souls. England expects that every man will do his duty. Those words were more than a call to arms. They were a lifeline. In that moment, the men aboard his ships felt an unbreakable bond, a shared purpose that transcended the chaos of battle. As the winds howled, the stories of other commanders flickered like shadows on the deck, each figure etched deeply into the chronicles of maritime history. There was Captain Charles Stewart, whose audacity at sea led him to secure victories against formidable foes. His daring tactics were not just strategies, they were acts of defiance against the seemingly insurmountable odds. And there was John Paul Jones, the father of the American Navy, whose famous declaration, "I have not yet begun to fight," became a rallying cry for those who dared to stand against oppression. These commanders were not just leaders, they were legends, their very names invoking feelings of courage and valor. They inspired their crews to embrace the storm rather than flee from it, reminding them that every wave could be a stepping stone toward greatness. But with every rise of the tide came the possibility of failure, and the weight of decisions pressed down on their shoulders like an anchor. Their humanity shone through the bravado of command. They wrestled with doubt, fear, and the haunting specter of loss. In the flickering candlelight of the captain's quarters, emotions swirled like the smoke from a dying flame. Captain Cook, poring over maps and journals, felt the pangs of loneliness creep in. He had seen beauty and destruction, and each encounter with indigenous peoples stirred a longing for connection, yet also a fear of misunderstanding. His heart ached for the world he had yet to explore, but the responsibility of his crew anchored him to the present. If they faltered, they would lose more than just the journey. They would lose their lives to the unforgiving sea. Meanwhile, at Trafalgar, Nelson prepared for battle, his heart beating to the rhythm of history. The tension was palpable, and he took a moment to reflect on the men who fought alongside him. Their faces flashed in his mind, each one carrying dreams, families, and the hope of a nation. The stakes were impossibly high, and yet the fire in his chest burned hotter than the fear that flickered at the edges of his resolve. He understood then that true leadership was not merely about strategy. It was about forging a bond, a legacy that would echo through time. The sea roared as if it too recognized the weight of destiny resting on these commanders. With each wave crashing against the hull, memories of the battles fought by these key figures surged forth, The triumphs, the losses, the bloodied decks that bore witness to their courage. Each commander left an indelible mark, shaping the very essence of naval warfare. Whether in the heart of a hurricane or the stillness before a storm, they stood as pillars of strength, guiding their men through the darkest of hours. As the tempest howled, Captain Cook made his decision. With unwavering resolve, he charted a course that would take them deeper into uncharted waters. Hope surged within him. This was his moment, the legacy he would carve into the annals of history. His men rallied behind him, the fear of the unknown eclipsed by the thrill of discovery. They understood that they were part of something grander than themselves, a voyage that might change not just their lives but the world. And in that same breath, Nelson gave the signal for battle. The ships of the British fleet surged forward, a wall of resolute determination against the backdrop of a turbulent sky. The clash of cannons rang out like a war cry, echoing the defiance in his heart. He fought not just for victory, but for every sailor who followed him into the fray. In that moment, the lines between life and death blurred, and all that mattered was the camaraderie that bound them, their shared dreams woven into the very fabric of their existence. As the tides of battle raged on, the commanders became more than leaders. They became symbols of hope, resilience, and unyielding spirit. Each moment, each decision, reverberated through the ranks, a testament to the power of one voice among many. The storm continued to roar, and the sea held its breath, poised to reveal the true legacy of those who dared to command the fleet. Each commander, with their unique stories and struggles, would forever be intertwined, their paths crossing in the most unexpected ways, reminding all who sailed the seas that unity in purpose could shift the very course of history. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the Salamis Strait, an expanse of water that would soon be anything but calm. On this seemingly tranquil afternoon, the air crackled with an electric tension, thick enough to choke a sailor's breath. Ships glided silently over the waves, their sails billowing gently. But beneath the surface, a storm brewed, both in the waters and within the hearts of the men who would soon confront it. The strait, a narrow passage flanked by rocky shores, had witnessed whispers of history, a silent witness to bloodshed, bravery, and betrayal. It was here that the fate of nations could twist like the currents that twisted around the islands. The air was filled with the salty tang of the sea and the rustle of anxious whispers. Each sailor stood at the railing, eyes darting, sensing the impending clash. Their hearts beat like war drums, echoing against the hulls of their ships. As the ships lined up, tension seeped into every fiber of their being. A light breeze carried the distant sound of clashing metal, and it sent shivers down their spines. They were not just soldiers. They were the embodiment of hopes and dreams, fears and regrets, pawns in a larger game of destiny. The imminent battle would not just test their skills as warriors, but would challenge their very will to survive. The first strike came suddenly, a flash of sunlight catching the edge of a blade as a watchman from the Athenian fleet raised his spear, signaling the start. A sharp war cry tore through the air, igniting a fire in the hearts of the waiting men. The ships surged forward, slicing through the water like arrows loosed from a bow. The sound of oars splashing became a chaotic symphony, accompanied by the frantic beating of drums that echoed the heartbeats of the warriors. But the genius of the strait was its unpredictable nature. Just when one believed they had an advantage, the waters would shift, turning the tide. With every wave that crashed against the hull, the soldiers felt the weight of history pressing down upon them. Would they follow in the footsteps of their forebears, those who had once tasted glorious victory, or would they be swallowed by the chaos, forgotten like so many who had fallen before? As the ships collided, splintering wood mingled with anguished cries, and the salty spray turned crimson with blood. Men fought like wild beasts driven by desperation and the unyielding need to survive. The chaos was a cruel dance, with fate spinning and twisting in ways that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The air thickened with the smell of sweat, salt, and the iron tang of blood. Each warrior fought not just for his life, but for his city, his family, and his very soul. Among them was a young soldier named Thales. His heart racing like a runaway horse, he had dreamt of glory, of being a hero etched into the annals of history. But as he faced the enemy across the splintering deck, his dreams felt distant, replaced by the raw instinct to survive. He gripped his sword tightly, knuckles white against the hilt, breathing in the chaos around him, an orchestra of fear, bravery, and desperation. As Thales engaged in battle, he felt the weight of the water beneath him, an unseen force that threatened to pull him under at any moment. The chaos of clanging swords, the shouts of men, the splashes of blood, it all merged into a cacophony that rattled his very core. He parried blows and struck back, each movement fueled by adrenaline. Yet he could not shake the feeling of being a puppet in a grand play, the strings pulled by the unseen hands of fate. In the midst of the frenzy, a sudden shout echoed from a nearby ship. "We are surrounded!" The words ripped through the chaos, slicing through the hope that had sparked in their hearts. Panic surged, and for a moment time froze. The warriors exchanged desperate glances, their eyes wide with fear. Would they hold their ground, or would they scatter like leaves before a storm? Just then, the waters seemed to rise, forming monstrous waves that threatened to engulf everything in their path. The very fabric of the strait shifted, and with it the dreams of many began to drown. The ships creaked and groaned, struggling against the swell. Thales felt the panic rise in his throat, threatening to choke him. Was this the end? But history had taught the men that within chaos lies the seed of opportunity. With a roar that transcended the fear in their hearts, the Athenian fleet rallied, their resolve hardening like stone. They pushed back against the tide, both in the water and in their souls. It was a moment suspended in time where courage clashed with despair and hope flickered like a candle in a storm. As the battle raged on, the strait became a living entity, a character in the tale of their struggle. The winds howled and the waters churned, as if the gods themselves were watching, waiting to see who would emerge victorious. Thales, with sweat pouring down his brow and determination etched on his face, became a symbol of that hope. He fought fiercely, his every swing of the sword resonating with the stories of the brave souls who had come before him. In this tumultuous ballet of life and death, the Salamis Strait stood as both battleground and witness, soaking up the sweat and blood of those who dared to dream of triumph. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, heralding the end of an era for some and the birth of legends for others. The challenge of the waves, the cries of valor, and the relentless struggle of men became part of an eternal dance, a cycle of chaos and courage that would echo through time, drawing in the currents of history in a never-ending loop. As the conflict raged on and the darkness deepened, the waters grew more treacherous. Thales, now weary but unyielding, felt the weight of the world pressing upon him. Each clash of swords, each cry of anguish, only served to fuel his desire to fight harder. He was not just battling for victory, he was fighting for his very existence. For the lives of his comrades, for the future that hung in the balance. The chaos was unrelenting, yet within that chaos the spirit of those who fought burned brightly, illuminating the darkness that threatened to consume them. They were not alone, they were a part of something greater, a moment suspended in time, where dreams and nightmares intertwined in an eternal struggle. With every ounce of strength they pressed forward, refusing to be swept away by the chaotic waters of the Salamis Strait. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden hue across the calm waters of the Aegean Sea. But beneath that serene surface lay a brewing tempest of conflict, spirit, and an unwavering resolve that would echo through history. The Greek navy, a symbol of resilience and courage, was about to face the raging storm of war, and their hearts beat in unison, a drum of defiance against the invading forces that threatened their homeland. As the first cries of battle rang out, the ships, small but steadfast, cut through the waves like arrows aimed at the heart of the enemy. Each vessel represented not just wood and metal, but the hope of a nation. The sailors, with their eyes gleaming with determination, gripped the ropes tightly, their muscles taut, ready to embrace the fight. The air was thick with the scent of salt and adrenaline, a potent mix that fueled their spirits as they steered towards the unknown. The Battle of Salamis loomed like a dark cloud, an event that would test the mettle of these men. It was a fight between the overwhelming might of the Persian Empire and the indomitable spirit of Greece. As the Persian fleet advanced, a monstrous shadow crept closer, but the Greeks stood firm, united. They believed not just in their ships, but in each other. The camaraderie among them was palpable. Every sailor felt the weight of their ancestors' sacrifices pressing upon them, urging them to fight not just for themselves, but for the generations that would follow. Whispers of bravery passed through the ranks. Each sailor had stories to tell, tales of their fathers and grandfathers who had sailed these very waters, defending their lands with valor. In the quiet moments before the clash, they shared laughter and dreams of what victory would bring. They envisioned a free Greece, where the sun would shine brighter upon their loved ones, where children could play without fear of tyranny. It was this vision that set their hearts ablaze, igniting a fire that would not easily be extinguished. Then came the thunderous clash, the sound of metal against metal, the shrieks of men and the cries of the wounded. The Greek ships surged forward, nimble and fierce against the lumbering Persian vessels. Each encounter was a dance of death. The Greeks moved with a grace born from desperation, striking swiftly and retreating just as fast. They weren't merely fighting for survival, they were fighting for their very existence, for the right to govern themselves, for the pride of their cities. As the battle raged on, a singular moment crystallized in the chaos. A young sailor, barely out of boyhood, found himself alone on the deck of his ship. The din of war surrounded him, yet in that instant, everything faded away. He gazed out at the horizon, where the sun hung low, a fiery orb reflecting off the waves. In that reflective moment, he felt an overwhelming connection to his ancestors. Their struggles, their hopes, their dreams. It coursed through him like wildfire, reminding him of why he fought. With renewed vigor, he turned back to the fray, eyes alight with purpose. Across the water, the commander of the Greek fleet, a seasoned warrior with scars that told tales of past victories and losses, rallied his men with a voice that thundered above the chaos. "Do not falter! Today, we fight not just as soldiers, but as guardians of our homeland. Each wave we conquer brings us one step closer to freedom." His words sliced through the noise, igniting a spark in the hearts of those around him. They nodded, their resolve hardening like steel in the fire of battle. As the day wore on, blood soaked the decks, and the cries of the fallen mingled with the triumphant shouts of those still fighting. Yet, amid the carnage, moments of heroism forged bonds of brotherhood that would last a lifetime. One sailor, witnessing his comrade fall, rushed into the fray to drag him to safety, even as arrows rained down around them. They fought not just for survival, but for the sake of each other. The spirit of the Navy thrived, unbreakable, undeterred, united. The tide began to turn, the Greeks, emboldened by their determination and the bonds that tethered them together, pressed forward with newfound ferocity. They maneuvered their ships with precision, striking at the heart of the Persian fleet. It was chaos, yes, but it was also a ballet, a fierce dance of strategy and instinct where every movement mattered. The sun sank lower, painting the sky crimson, mirroring the blood spilled on the decks. Yet, even in the thick of battle, there were moments of stillness. A sailor paused, staring at the sea, remembering the laughter of his children at home, the warmth of his wife's embrace. Memories flooded him like waves crashing upon the shore, urging him to keep fighting. The promise of returning home, of seeing his loved ones once again, became a beacon, guiding him through the darkest moments. As dusk settled over the battlefield, the cries of war transformed into something more. The Greeks, pushed by desperation and hope, launched one final assault. With a collective roar, they surged forward, their ships cutting through the water, embodying a spirit that could not be quenched. The Persian fleet, once a force of fear, began to falter, their resolve crumbling before the unwavering tenacity of the Greeks. In that defining moment, victory was no longer just a distant dream, it was within their grasp. With every clash of wood upon wood, with every shout of defiance, the spirit of the Greek navy soared. They were a force of nature, a testament to the power of unity, courage, and hope. The waves bore witness to their struggle, and as the last light of day faded, their legacy was carved into the very fabric of history, an echo of bravery that would resonate for centuries to come. And just as the night fell silent over the water, the echoes of that day began to transform into whispers of a new dawn, setting the stage for the legends yet to be told. The spirit of the Navy, ignited under fire, would endure, ever ready to rise once again. The air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and fear, a dreadful mix that could be tasted on the tongue. Soldiers huddled behind makeshift barricades, their hearts pounding like war drums in their chests. Amidst the chaos, the sun began to dip low on the horizon, casting a fiery glow over the battlefield, as if the heavens themselves were bleeding for the men below. This was no ordinary day. This was a moment that would shape the course of history. In the distance, the sound of cannon fire rumbled like thunder, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. A shout pierced the air, a command, a plea, a desperate call for courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Among those soldiers was Private James Hartley, a young man with dreams of returning home, his mother's face forever etched in his mind. He had only just turned 18, yet here he was, standing on the precipice of fate, the weight of his rifle heavy against his shoulder. As the sun began its descent, shadows loomed larger, twisting the landscape into an eerie spectacle of despair. The first wave of enemy troops charged forward, a relentless tide that washed over the earth, threatening to engulf everything in its path. Their battle cries echoed like a haunting melody, filling the hearts of the defenders with dread. Hartley's breath caught in his throat as he braced himself for what was to come, his hands trembling but resolute. Then, just as the enemy reached the crest of the hill, a thunderous boom resonated through the air. The artillery had finally been unleashed, a symphony of destruction that rained chaos upon the advancing soldiers. Smoke billowed like the ghost of a long-forgotten dream, and for a brief moment, Time itself seemed to stand still. Hartley watched in awe and horror as men fell, their bodies crumpling to the ground, the sound of their cries drowned out by the roar of cannonballs. But amidst the carnage, something shifted. The tide of the battle began to turn. The commander, a grizzled veteran named Colonel Thompson, rallied his troops with a voice that cut through the din like a blade. "We hold this ground! We are the shield against darkness!" His words ignited a spark of hope, and Hartley felt a surge of adrenaline rush through him. This was their moment to reclaim what had been lost, to stand firm against the storm. With a fierce determination, Hartley joined the ranks, charging forward with his fellow soldiers. Each step felt like a heartbeat, quickening as they advanced. The world around him blurred. All he could see was the enemy, an embodiment of fear that must be defeated. He raised his rifle, aiming with shaky hands, and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed in his ears, a reminder that he was no longer just a boy, but a soldier fighting for his life, his home, and his dreams. As the battle raged on, Hartley's mind raced, filled with memories of laughter and warmth. He thought of his mother's gentle voice, coaxing him to be brave. He thought of the promises he had made to return, and in that moment, he fought not just for survival, but for every dream he had ever held dear. But the enemy was relentless. They regrouped, their numbers swelling like a dark cloud ready to unleash its fury. Just as despair threatened to take hold, a flash of movement caught Hartley's eye. From the flanks of their position, reinforcements arrived, brave souls who had heard the call and rushed to the front lines. The sight of those familiar faces ignited a fire within him, a reminder that they were not alone in this fight. With renewed vigor, the defenders surged forward, pushing against the tide. The sound of clashing swords and gunfire filled the air, a chaotic symphony of survival. Hartley felt himself lose track of time, the battle becoming a blur of motion and adrenaline. Each enemy he faced became a ghost to conquer, each victory a step closer to reclaiming their ground. Yet, fate has a way of testing even the bravest souls. Just as victory seemed within reach, disaster struck. A cannonball whistled through the air, crashing into the barricade where Hartley stood. The explosion sent shards of wood and debris flying, and for a heartbeat the world was filled with smoke and confusion. Hartley found himself thrown to the ground, the air knocked from his lungs, his heart pounding in a rhythm of panic. Gasping for breath, he struggled to rise, his vision still clouded with dust. From the chaos, familiar voices called out, mingled with shouts of fear and urgency. "James, where are you?" It was his best friend, Ethan, fighting just a few feet away. The sight of Ethan's determined face, blooded yet unyielding, filled Hartley with a sense of urgency he couldn't ignore. They were more than friends, they were brothers, forged in the fires of battle. With sheer will, Hartley pushed himself up, ignoring the pain that surged through his body. Together they fought side by side, a bond strengthened by the knowledge that they were each other's lifeline. They advanced toward the enemy once more, the ground beneath them shaking with each step, the air thickening with the weight of hope and fear. Then came the turning point, a moment that would echo through history. A strategic maneuver led by Colonel Thompson sent waves of confusion through the enemy ranks. The defenders, fueled by the spirit of survival, pressed forward, driving back the darkness that had threatened to consume them. Hartley felt an overwhelming rush of emotion as they pushed closer to victory, each moment filled with the echoes of bravery and sacrifice. But even as the tide turned, the reality of war loomed heavy. The cost was immeasurable, the loss palpable in the air. As night fell, a haunting silence settled over the battlefield, broken only by the distant cries of the wounded and the quiet rustle of the wind. Hartley stood among his comrades, his heart heavy with both triumph and sorrow, knowing that while the battle had changed, the war was not yet over. The dawn of a new day would bring fresh challenges, but for now they had fought and survived. The flames of hope flickered in their hearts, a light against the dark. The winds howled through the narrow passage as if whispering tales of ancient mariners, their hearts pounding with the fear and thrill of the unknown. Each gust carried the scent of salt and adventure, mingling in the air like a forgotten memory waiting to be uncovered. The Straits, a slender ribbon of water slicing through the earth, had always held the power to transform lives. For those who dared to navigate its treacherous waters, the stakes were high and the consequences were profound. It was a time when the world was still wild and untamed, when the maps were not yet filled with the neat lines that separate lands. Instead, they were scribbled with the ink of daring souls who ventured forth, often never to return. Here, in this narrow channel, geography shaped destinies. The Straits were not just a geographical feature. They were a crucible that tested the very essence of humanity itself. As ships braved the turbulent waters, their hulls creaked under the strain of the waves. Every sailor aboard felt the electricity in the air. They were not only navigating water, but history itself, sailing through the echoes of civilizations long past. The straits had witnessed battles fought over power, trade routes, and the very survival of empires. This was where the East met the West, where cultures collided and fused, creating a tapestry rich with stories of valor and tragedy. Beneath the surface, the currents twisted and turned, much like the fates of those who dared to plow through them. Each sailor's grip tightened on the worn ropes, the wood of the ship alive with the memories of countless voyages. They were reminded of the navigators who had come before, like the fearless Vikings who, with their longships slicing through the icy waters, had charted courses across the unknown. Their legacy lingered, rooted in the very geography that defined this strait. The imagery of the straits was mesmerizing, with steep cliffs looming like sentinels on either side, watching over the daring souls that sought to pass. It was as if the land itself was alive, breathing its history into the weary travelers. Each rock and crevice whispered stories of shipwrecks and incredible feats of navigation, igniting a sense of wonder and dread within those who sailed. In one corner of the straits, a hidden cove beckoned. The shimmering water contrasted sharply against the jagged rocks, a siren's call that lured many a ship to its doom. Here, the geography turned treacherous, teaching a brutal lesson about the price of underestimating nature. The strait had swallowed ships whole, leaving only whispers of their existence carried by the waves. The sailors spoke in hushed tones of these ghost ships, their fears sharpened by tales of the lost, reminding them that the waters were both a pathway and a peril. On a stormy evening, the skies darkened and the winds turned furious. The clouds roared like ancient beasts and the sea responded with a rage that shook even the most seasoned sailors to their core. As the waves crashed against the vessel, hearts raced with adrenaline. The straits became a battleground, pitting man against nature in a struggle for survival. The sound of thunder echoed like a war drum, urging them forward while the lightning illuminated the chaos around them. But amidst the terror there was beauty. The raw power of the storm revealed the strait's wild spirit, a reminder of how small humans were in the grand tapestry of the universe. A flicker of determination ignited within each sailor. They tightened their grips, resolved to fight against the tempest that threatened to claim them. The geography of the straits, once a mere obstacle, transformed into a test of resilience and courage. As dawn broke, the storm receded, leaving an eerie calm in its wake. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting golden rays upon the water, illuminating the wreckage left behind. Sailors emerged, weathered yet triumphant, their souls forever etched with the memories of that night. They shared glances filled with unspoken understanding, knowing that they had faced the straits and emerged stronger, forever bonded by the trials they had endured. The straits served as a bridge connecting lands, but it was also a barrier that separated dreams from reality. Trade routes flourished and cultures intertwined, yet the geography demanded respect. Emperors and explorers alike understood that to navigate the straits was to dance with fate itself. The ebb and flow of commerce and conflict became a rhythm that defined the lives of those who lived in its embrace. In quieter moments, the straits offered reflection. Fishermen would cast their nets, hoping for a bountiful catch, their faces etched with years of toil under the sun. They knew the waters intimately, their lives woven into the fabric of the geography. Each ripple carried the weight of their hopes and dreams, as well as the burdens of their past. They were the guardians of the straits, preserving the stories of those who had come before and those who would follow. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the straits whispered its secrets once more. The geography held its breath as if waiting for the next wave of adventurers to uncover its mysteries. The stories of love and loss intertwined with aspirations and fears, creating a living testament to the human spirit. Each traveler looked to the horizon, their hearts filled with an insatiable desire to explore, to conquer, to navigate the straits that held both danger and promise. And so the straits stood as a timeless reminder of the power of geography, shaping lives, crafting legends, and weaving the fabric of history. As the waters lapped against the shores, the call of adventure echoed, resonating with those who dared to listen, leaving them compelled to answer the beckoning of the unknown. The journey was far from over. The straits would always be a gateway, leading to uncharted waters and stories yet to unfold. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow over the expanse of the Persian Empire, a vast sea of lands that stretched from the rugged mountains of the Zagros to the shimmering shores of the Mediterranean. At this moment, it was not the beauty of the landscape that held the empire's breath. It was the tension, the unyielding grasp of ambition that threatened to choke it. Soldiers clad in the shimmering armor of the Achaemenids marched with a heavy heart, each step echoing the weight of their king's grand vision. But beneath the surface of this strength lay a fissure, one that would soon swallow the empire whole. Darius the Great, once a master of strategy and an architect of expansion, now found himself ensnared in a web of his own making. He had stretched his forces thin, sending waves of men across mountains and deserts, his eyes set on glory beyond measure. Each new territory brought the promise of riches, of prestige. Yet with every mile they marched, the strain on his forces grew. The once united legions, once the pride of Persia, were beginning to fray at the edges. As they approached the borders of Greece, the air was thick with unease. The soldiers whispered tales of the fierce warriors that awaited them, men who fought not just for their land, but for their very existence. Could a few brave Greeks really challenge the might of an empire? The question hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. In the shadows of the Persian ranks, doubt began to blossom like dark flowers. A young soldier named Artaxerxes, his heart swelling with the ideals of heroism, looked up at his commanding officer with a mix of hope and fear. "We are the Persians," he declared, his voice trembling slightly. "We can take any land." Yet deep down he felt the tremors of doubt. Their supply lines were stretched incomprehensibly thin, and each day they advanced further into hostile territory without the support they so desperately needed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky a fiery red, a messenger arrived, breathless and wild-eyed. He carried news of a Greek coalition, a formidable alliance formed to stand against the sprawling tide of Persian ambition. Panic rippled through the ranks. The once proud soldiers of Darius felt the weight of their king's decisions pressing upon them like a mountain. How could they face such a united front? The night was restless. As the soldiers lay on the cold ground, the sounds of distant horns and chants from the allied Greek forces reverberated through the valleys. They were fierce, they were ready, and they were numerous. Artaxerxes clutched his sword, the metallic coolness offering little comfort. He thought of his family back home and wondered if he would ever return. His dreams of glory felt distant, overshadowed by the grim reality unfolding around him. Days turned into weeks as the Persian forces advanced. Each step into Greek territory was met with fierce resistance. The once unyielding confidence began to break like glass, shattered by unexpected ambushes and guerrilla tactics that caught the Persian army off guard. The Greeks, fueled by the invaders' arrogance, struck like lightning, hitting hard and retreating before the massive Persian battalions could respond. One fateful morning, as the sun rose with an eerie stillness, the clash of metal rang out across the valley. A battle had begun, and it was unlike anything Artaxerxes had ever experienced. The air was thick with dust, and the cries of men filled his ears. A cacophony of pain and fury. He fought valiantly, but with each fallen comrade he felt the weight of miscalculation pulling him down. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and the realization sank in like a stone in his heart. The Persians' ambition had ignited a fire within their enemies, a flame that could not be extinguished. The Greeks fought with the ferocity of lions, defending their homes against an invading force that had overextended itself in pursuit of glory. Artaxerxes, amidst the chaos, saw faces of his fellow soldiers that mirrored his own despair. They were tired, hungry, and most painfully, they were losing hope. As the battle raged on, a dark cloud loomed over the Persian camp. The reality of their situation became apparent. Darius had overreached. Supplies were dwindling, morale was crumbling, and the once united front was now a fractured army, each man grappling with uncertainty and fear. The cries for reinforcement were met with silence, a deafening void that echoed their impending doom. In a desperate bid to regain control, Darius sent out more troops, weakening his hold on other fronts, the very fabric of his empire beginning to tear. Soldiers arrived with hollow eyes, their spirits crushed under the weight of relentless defeat. The king's miscalculations were becoming painfully clear. His dream of a vast empire was fraying at the seams, and the soldiers were paying the price. Artaxerxes, amidst the chaos, felt a surge of anger and determination. "We must rally!" he shouted, trying to inspire those around him. But the fire in his heart was met with the cold reality of despair. They were not simply fighting for victory, they were fighting for survival against an enemy that knew the land, an enemy that had risen from the ashes of despair to defend what was theirs. The battle seemed unending. The skies grew dark, mirroring the turmoil of the hearts below. Each clash of swords was a reminder of the stakes, each fallen soldier a testament to Darius's hubris. The once great Persian Empire, a symbol of strength and power, now faced the very real possibility of collapse. And at the center of it all was the haunting question, had they stretched themselves too far? As the last echoes of the battle began to fade, the realization dawned on Artaxerxes. This was not just a fight for land. It was a fight for identity, for life itself. The Greeks had proven that even the mightiest could be brought to their knees when blinded by ambition. The Persian forces, once a roaring tide, now stood on the precipice of disaster, a poignant reminder of the fragility of power. In the shadows of defeat, the Persian soldiers gathered, their hearts heavy with the weight of miscalculations. The future loomed before them, uncertain and fraught with danger. Would they rise again, or would the empire they fought for crumble into the dust of history? Only time would tell, but one thing was clear. The echoes of ambition had transformed into whispers of doubt, and the road ahead was paved with the remnants of overreached dreams. The sun hung low over the rugged hills of Greece, casting long shadows on the battlefield where history was about to change course. It was a day filled with tension, a day when the air crackled with anticipation. Greek soldiers, hardened by the fires of previous conflicts, stood shoulder to shoulder. Their eyes reflected a fierce determination, the kind born from years of struggle and the aching desire to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. They could feel the heartbeat of their ancestors echoing through the generations, urging them to rise. As the first rays of dawn pierced the horizon, the Greeks were not merely waiting for an attack. They were preparing to unleash a counterattack of their own. The strategy was unfolding like a meticulously crafted tapestry, each thread pulling together stories of courage, loyalty, and a dream of freedom. The battle lines had been drawn, and with them, hopes began to surge through the ranks like a wildfire. General Alexandros, a figure of legend among his men, paced back and forth, his brow furrowed in thought. Each footstep echoed like the distant sounds of thunder, a prelude to the storm that was about to break. He was no stranger to adversity. He had faced it countless times. Today, though, the stakes felt higher, the weight heavier. He knew that failure was not an option. With every glance at his soldiers, he felt the burning responsibility of their futures resting on his shoulders. The strategy was simple yet profound. The Greeks would employ the element of surprise, a tactic that had served them well in the past. They would strike at dawn, exploiting the enemy's moment of weakness. Their foes, confident and perhaps complacent, would soon find that the tables could turn in an instant. The Greeks had learned the hard way. They had watched their brothers fall, but they had also witnessed resilience blossom in the face of despair. Today, they would transform their pain into power. The tension in the air thickened as scouts returned with vital information. They had spotted enemy movements, shifts in their formation, whispers of doubt creeping into the ranks of the invaders. A sense of urgency took hold. The Greeks gathered in silent understanding, their breaths mingling in the cool morning air, each heartbeat a reminder of the lives at stake. They were not just fighting for territory, they were fighting for their homes, their families, their very existence. As the sun began to rise, casting a golden hue over the landscape, the Greek soldiers felt the surge of adrenaline course through their veins. Their hearts beat as one, a symphony of resolve echoing in their chests. Each man clutched his weapon tightly, fingers brushing against the cool metal, a reminder of the battles fought and those yet to come. They had trained for this moment, and now it was time to act. With a sudden thunderous roar, General Alexandros raised his sword high, the gleam of steel reflecting the sunlight. "Forward!" he bellowed, and the cry reverberated through the ranks like a battle hymn. They surged forward, a wave of defiance crashing against the complacency of their enemies. The Greeks were no longer just defenders, they were warriors, fierce and unyielding, rising to claim their destiny. The initial clash was like a tempest unleashed. Steel met steel, shouts mingled with the sound of swords slicing through the air. The ground beneath their feet trembled as the two forces collided, a violent dance of survival and honor. The Greeks, driven not just by training but by the weight of their ancestors' stories, fought with an intensity that made time itself seem to stand still. Each blow was infused with the yearning for freedom, each parry an act of defiance against those who sought to subjugate them. For the generals on both sides, the battle was a chess game played in real time. While the Greeks executed their strategy with precision, the enemy scrambled to respond, their initial confidence crumbling like a house of cards. The Greeks took advantage of the chaos, striking flanks and exploiting vulnerabilities. Each small victory bolstered their morale, igniting a fire that spread through the ranks like a beacon of hope. In the thick of it all, a young soldier named Nikos fought alongside his brothers. Fear had gripped him when the call to arms was sounded, but as the battle unfolded, his trepidation transformed into raw courage. He could hear the cries of his comrades, and the weight of their collective resolve fueled his spirit. He dodged a thrust from an enemy blade, countering swiftly, his training kicking in as if it was second nature. In that moment, he was not just fighting for himself, he was fighting for every soul that believed in freedom. As day broke fully, the battlefield became a canvas painted with the colors of bravery and sacrifice. The sun shone down on a scene of chaos and beauty, the warriors locked in a life-and-death struggle, embodying the very essence of humanity. The Greeks were relentless, their strategies unfolding like a well-rehearsed play, and with every passing moment, the tide of battle shifted. The enemy, once so sure of their victory, now faltered as the Greeks pushed forward, hearts ablaze and spirits unbroken. But behind the lines, General Alexandros felt a shift. A moment of doubt crept into his mind as he surveyed the scene. Victory was within reach, but he could not shake the feeling that the enemy had not yet revealed their full strength. He pressed on, rallying his troops with words that ignited their spirits, reminding them of the weight their ancestors had carried, urging them to fight not just with their swords, but with their hearts. As the battle raged on, whispers of a counter-attack began to circulate. The enemy was regrouping, calling upon reserves that had been kept hidden, and the Greeks felt the ground beneath them shift once more. The emotional tide began to turn. For every step forward, they faced a fierce retaliation. Fear danced at the edges of their resolve, a reminder of all that was at stake. The initial triumph morphed into a struggle for survival. And just when it seemed that the resolve of the Greek warriors might falter, a rallying cry echoed through the ranks. It was the voice of Nikos, his spirit unyielding. "For our fathers! For our land!" he shouted, igniting the fire once more. The soldiers around him, now reminded of their purpose, surged forward again, a wave of fury crashing against the enemy forces. The day wore on, the sun climbing higher, burning brighter, as the battle turned into a grueling test of endurance and will. The strategies that had seemed so clear at dawn now felt like shifting sands beneath their feet. But in that chaos, in that beautiful mess of humanity, the Greeks found strength in each other, a bond forged in the crucible of struggle. And in that moment, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting a fiery glow across the battlefield, the outcome still hung in the balance, the future uncertain. Would history remember this day as a moment of triumph or tragedy? Only time would tell. But the heart of Greece beat fiercely on that field, a testament to the enduring spirit of those who dared to dream of freedom. The sky was painted in shades of gray, a heavy curtain of clouds hanging low over the battlefield, where the echoes of gunfire and distant cries twisted the air into a suffocating haze. In this moment, time felt suspended, as if the world had paused to witness the raw, unflinching reality of combat, where bravery and fear danced a perilous waltz. Soldiers, young faces hardened by the weight of their rifles, stood shoulder to shoulder, hearts racing with adrenaline and dread. In the midst of it all, Private David Thompson watched his friend, Sergeant James Murray, take a step forward into the fray. The ground shook beneath them, rumbling with the relentless advance of war. David felt a pang of desperation clawing at his chest. The bond they had forged in training, a bond built on laughter, shared dreams, and the occasional whispered fear, was about to be tested beyond anything they had ever imagined. Their platoon had been tasked with a seemingly impossible mission, to secure a ridge that overlooked an enemy stronghold. It was a strategic point, vital to the success of the larger campaign, yet it loomed ominously in the distance like a monstrous specter. As the order to advance came down the line, a heavy silence fell upon the men. No words were needed. The gravity of the mission hung like a thick fog, suffocating any flicker of hope. Out there on that ridge, the air would be filled with the stench of gunpowder and the metallic taste of blood. But it was more than that. It was the haunted eyes of men who had lost everything, the piercing cries of the wounded, and the unbreakable silence of those who would never return. David thought of home, of summer nights spent on his porch, his mother's gentle laughter drifting on the wind. But home felt like a lifetime away, swallowed by the chaos that now enveloped him. As they charged forward, the world erupted into a cacophony of explosions and shouts. David felt the ground tremble beneath him, each step echoing like a heartbeat. The first shot rang out, striking a nearby tree and sending splinters flying. A fellow soldier fell, a look of surprise frozen on his face, and David's heart lurched. He stumbled, lifting his rifle as instinct kicked in, the weight of its cold metal grounding him in the storm of emotions swirling within him. Amidst the chaos, Sergeant Murray shouted encouragement, his voice rising above the din. "Keep moving, we can't stop now." David locked eyes with him, a fleeting moment of reassurance passing between them. But even as they pressed on, the specter of death lingered close, an uninvited companion that whispered promises of despair. With each passing moment, the world narrowed to a singular focus: survival. David's breath came in ragged gasps, the weight of his gear dragging him down. He remembered the training, the drills, the endless hours of preparation, but nothing could prepare him for the raw, visceral terror of battle. The bullet whizzed past him, a haunting reminder that death was never far away. The line between life and death blurred, and the adrenaline surged through him like a raging river. Suddenly, a shout pierced the air. James was down, Time froze. David rushed forward, his heart pounding in his ears. He skidded to his friend's side, the world around them fading away as fear clawed at his throat. James lay on the ground, his face pale and contorted in pain, blood seeping through his uniform like a dark omen. "Help! Me!" he gasped, his voice barely a whisper. David's hands trembled as he fumbled to apply pressure to the wound, a desperate attempt to stem the flow of life that was slipping away. Every instinct told him to cry out, to scream for help, but the chaos around him swallowed his voice whole. He was alone in this moment, tethered to his friend by a fragile thread of hope. Tears stung his eyes as he fought against the rising tide of despair. "You're going to be okay, James, just hold on." But deep down, he knew the truth. This was a battle they might not win. As the fight raged on, David found himself torn between the chaos of the battlefield and the stillness of his friend's fading breath. Memories flooded back, laughter shared over campfires, whispered secrets in the dark of night. In that instant, the weight of their bond felt both like a shield and a shackle. With every passing second, the world grew darker, and David realized that the battlefield would forever change him, erasing the innocence of youth and replacing it with a haunting understanding of sacrifice. Around them, the tide of battle shifted like the relentless waves of an ocean. Men fell, their cries echoing in the winds, and through it all, David clung to the flicker of hope that still burned within him. But as he knelt beside James, cradling his friend's head in his arms, the sounds of war faded into a distant murmur. All that mattered was the warmth slipping away from him, the life that had once filled James's eyes now dimming. "Don't leave me," David pleaded, his voice breaking, but the words hung in the air, unanswered, as the storm of war raged on around them. In that moment, a profound understanding settled over him. There were no heroes, only men, and the choices they made in the crucible of combat. And as the relentless battle continued, the haunting question remained: who would emerge from the shadows, and who would be lost forever in the embrace of the unforgiving void? The clash of steel, the cries for help, the heart-wrenching sounds of loss would not fade. They would echo in the hearts of the survivors, marking each man with a scar that could never be seen. And as David felt the weight of his friend slip away, he knew this was just the beginning of a story woven in struggle, pain, and the unbreakable spirit of those who had dared to fight. In the crucible of combat, every soul would be tested, and the echoes of their stories would resonate through time, waiting to be told. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the choppy waters of the Aegean Sea as the Persian fleet prepared for what they believed would be a glorious confrontation. Ships of all sizes bobbed gently on the waves, their sails billowing proudly in the breeze, each vessel a testament to the might of the Persian Empire. Yet, beneath the confident exterior of the fleet, tension thrummed like a taut string, vibrating with the unspoken fears of men caught between duty and dread. On that fateful day, as the ships lined up for battle, the air crackled with anticipation. The commanders, clad in ornate armor, exchanged glances filled with unspoken questions. Would they defeat the Greeks and solidify their power? Or would they fall short, their dream of unchallenged dominance slipping through their fingers like sand? A heavy stillness enveloped the ships as they awaited the signal to advance, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. Then, with a thunderous roar, the battle horns blared. The Greek fleet, fierce and determined, surged forth. They sped across the waves like predators unleashed, their ships cutting through the water with a ferocity that sent shockwaves through the Persian ranks. The clash of wooden hulls echoed like thunder, a cacophony of chaos that drowned out the calls of the commanders. Men shouted and yelled, their voices rising above the din, each cry filled with a unique blend of fear and fury. Fighting erupted on the decks, chaos reigning supreme. Persian soldiers, their hearts pounding like war drums, faced the unyielding resolve of the Greek warriors. The scent of salt water mingled with the metallic tang of blood, creating an atmosphere thick with desperation and courage. In that moment, every man fought not just for glory, but for survival, for the breath of life that hung in the balance. But as the battle raged, something unexpected began to unfold. The Greeks, bolstered by their home turf and a fierce determination, began to turn the tide. Their ships moved with an uncanny precision, a coordinated dance that left the Persian fleet reeling. For every Persian vessel that charged bravely ahead, 2 Greek ships flanked it, striking with swiftness and force. Panic started to creep into the minds of the Persian sailors. They called out to one another, their voices tinged with doubt. The proud banners that once floated boldly in the breeze began to droop as if weighed down by the despair that seeped into the hearts of the crew. Fear became a living entity, gnawing at the edges of their resolve. The realization that they were losing this battle, a battle they had deemed a certain victory, was like a cold blade thrust into their chests. Amidst the turmoil, Darius, a young Persian commander, clutched the rail of his ship, his knuckles white with tension. He had trained for this moment, dreamed of it, yet the reality was far from the glory he had envisioned. His eyes darted across the horizon, searching for a glimmer of hope among the chaos. The cries of his men, once filled with bravado, now echoed his deepest fears. Defeat was looming. As the Greeks pressed forward, the resolve of the Persian fleet wavered. In a moment of sheer desperation, a growl of panic swept through the ships as some began to retreat, unwilling to face the fury of the advancing Greeks. The retreat was not a slow withdrawal. It was a frantic scramble, an exodus driven by the primal instinct to survive. Ships collided in a frenzy, wood splintering and men tumbling, the sea turning crimson as chaos consumed them. Darius watched in horror as his comrades abandoned ship, their eyes wide with terror. The sight bore into his soul, igniting a fire of defiance within him. "Stand your ground!" he shouted, his voice a roar against the cacophony, but it was as if his words were swallowed by the crashing waves, lost to an unrelenting storm of fear. With every passing moment, the proud Persian fleet fragmented, the once united front dissolving into chaos. Those who remained loyal to Darius felt the weight of despair settle upon their shoulders. They fought valiantly, but the tide of battle had shifted beyond their control. The realization that their empire's dream was slowly unraveling gnawed at them, each strike of their swords now filled with a sense of futility. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of crimson and gold, the retreat turned into a full-blown rout. Ships that had once sailed with purpose now drifted aimlessly, their flags lowered as if mourning their defeat. Darius, still standing aboard his ship, felt the weight of history pressing down on him. He understood that this moment would echo through time. The retreat of the Persian fleet would become a tale of unexpected failure, a dark mark against an empire that had once seemed invincible. The chaos continued to unfold as the sea claimed what remained of the fleet. The sounds of despair filled the air, an anguished symphony that tore at the hearts of those who had fought so bravely. Darius's heart ached for his fallen comrades, men whose dreams of glory had turned to nightmares in a matter of hours. A fierce storm brewed in the distance, mirroring the turmoil within him. As the last remnants of the Persian fleet scattered across the waves, a shiver of doubt wormed its way into Darius's mind. What would this defeat mean for him, for his people, for the empire? The question haunted him like a specter, lurking in the shadows of his thoughts. Defeat was not just a loss on the battlefield. It was a wound that would fester, a mark that could never be erased. And just as the storm began to howl, the clouds darkening overhead, a single thought ignited within him. This was not the end. The winds of fate had shifted, and though the Persian fleet had retreated in a spirit of despair, Darius felt the embers of resilience igniting within him. Victory might have slipped through their fingers today, but the battle was far from over. In the depths of despair lay the seeds of defiance, waiting for the moment to rise anew. The storm churned around him, a furious reminder of the chaos that had unfolded, but in that moment, Darius found himself standing tall against the raging winds, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The sea roared in response, a wild symphony of turmoil and hope, echoing through the night as history shifted like the tides. The air crackled with tension as the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold. Each wave slapped against the sturdy hulls of the Greek triremes, a relentless reminder of the task that lay before them. The sea was both friend and foe, an expanse that could cradle them in safety or swallow them whole. The sailors, hardened by countless battles, felt the pulse of the ocean beneath their feet, echoing the adrenaline that surged through their veins. Their eyes, steely and focused, were fixed on the distant glimmer of the enemy's ships. A cacophony of commands echoed amidst the crew, snapping them to attention like the crack of a whip. They were not merely soldiers, they were warriors, driven by a relentless spirit to protect their homeland. Each man gripped the oar with fierce determination, their muscles straining under the weight of the task ahead. The rhythmic sound of wood against water was a symphony of intent, a melody that promised glory or despair. In the distance, black sails billowed ominously, a dark omen on the horizon. These were not just ships, they were harbingers of conflict, the dreaded forces of Persia, known for their cunning and cruelty. The Greek fleet had caught wind of their approach, a chance to seize victory that had been long awaited. The call for pursuit rang out, and with it came a rush of emotions: fear, hope, and the burning flame of vengeance. As the ships surged forward, the ocean foam danced around their bows, each vessel a testament to Athenian craftsmanship. With every stroke of the oars, the sailors' hearts raced faster. The thought of retribution spurred them on. They could almost hear the cries of their ancestors, echoing through time, urging them to strike and to defend their sacred land. The captains shouted orders, their voices hoarse yet commanding. The men knew what was at stake. Their families awaited their return, and if they failed, the consequences would be dire. Their loved ones would live under the shadow of tyranny. The thought ignited a fire within them, igniting a fierce determination that burned brighter than the sun setting behind them. Suddenly, a shout erupted from the crow's nest. The enemy was sighted. A surge of adrenaline swept through the fleet. The Greek ships turned sharply, their sleek forms cutting through the water like daggers. The crew members leaned into their oars, muscles taut and straining against the relentless pull of the sea. The distance closed between them and the enemy, the tension palpable. As they surged forward, the enemy ships began to scatter, like frightened birds flapping away from a predator. The Greeks pressed on, relentless in their pursuit. The ocean turned choppy, waves crashing against the hulls, splashing cold salt water on the determined faces of the sailors. But the spray did nothing to dampen their spirits. Each wave propelled them closer to their goal. Rage coursed through the blood of the Greeks as they recalled the tales of what the Persians had done, the destruction they had wrought. They were driven not only by duty, but by a fierce desire for revenge. Some thought of their brothers who had fallen in previous battles, their faces frozen in expressions of courage and sacrifice. The memory of their comrades spurred them on, each stroke of the oar echoing with the promises of honor. The enemy ships, though initially fleeing, began to regroup. Their sails caught the wind, and the chase became a dance of strategy and skill. The Greeks weren't just fighting for glory, they were fighting for survival, for freedom. A sudden shift came as the enemy turned to face them, swords drawn and arrows nocked, prepared to defend their fleeting lives. Tension thickened in the air. The moment had arrived. As the ships collided, the chaos erupted. The air was filled with the clang of metal against metal, the cries of men, and the splashes of water. Warriors leaped from vessel to vessel, fierce and unwavering, their hearts pounding as fiercely as the onslaught of the battle. The Greeks fought with the fury of lions, determined to drive the enemy back into the depths from whence they came. In the midst of chaos, a young sailor named Alexios found himself face to face with a Persian warrior. Time slowed as their eyes locked. Alexios felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Would he make his stand, or would he falter? The world around them faded into a blur as he lunged forward, his spear gleaming in the dim light. With a swift motion, he struck, the blade finding its mark. The warrior fell, but the victory was fleeting. The clash of swords, the yells of desperation, and the shouts of triumph melded into a symphony of war. Each sailor fought not just for victory, but for the legacy of their people, for the stories that would be told for generations to come. The tide of battle shifted, moments swinging like a pendulum, with triumph dancing just out of reach. The Greeks pressed on, every muscle burning, every heart racing. Glory was tantalizingly close, but it remained just beyond their grasp. The cries of the fallen echoed in their ears, urging them to fight harder, to push through the fatigue, to chase the enemy until the last ship was either captured or sunk. Flashes of steel and bursts of bravery intertwined as the night grew deeper, the decks slick with water and sweat, mingling with the blood of the fallen. The Greek ships, a proud armada against the darkness, continued their relentless pursuit into the night, where the stakes were life or death. Amidst the chaos and confusion, something deeper stirred within the hearts of the Greeks. It was not just the pursuit of the enemy that drove them, it was a shared fate, a bond forged in the fires of war, a collective spirit that would not be broken. And as the waves crashed around them, the relentless chase went on, each ship charging forward into the unknown, their fates intertwined in a story yet to be fully written. The horizon was theirs to chase, and the night was just beginning. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a fiery glow over the restless waves of the Aegean Sea. The air was thick with tension, a palpable unease that clung to the hearts of men like shadows in the fading light. It was the summer of 480 BC, and the once mighty Persian fleet, a symbol of power and dominance, now lay in ruins, a wreckage that mirrored the despair within the souls of those who had sailed under its proud banner. Admiral Casasp stood at the prow of what remained of his flagship, the great king's pride reduced to splintered wood and tarnished dreams. His gaze swept across the horizon, searching for the once familiar sails that had dominated these waters. Days ago, they had been a fearsome armada, gliding through the waves like thunderclouds ready to unleash their fury. Now defeat clung to them like a cold sweat, a memory of glory slipping away with every crashing wave. The news of their naval defeat at Salamis had spread like wildfire, igniting whispers of treachery and cowardice among the ranks. The battle had been fierce, a clash of titans beneath an unforgiving sky, but the aftermath was a haunting silence, a tangible weight that crushed the spirit of the Persian crew. The loss of their naval command was not just a tactical failure, it was a wound that festered in the hearts of men, a loss of identity, a shattering of pride. Morale had always been the lifeblood of an army, and with the devastating defeat, that lifeblood had begun to dry up. Kersasp could see it in their eyes. Men who had once stood tall and resolute, now reduced to husks of their former selves. Their once spirited laughter had vanished, replaced by a heavy quiet that weighed on the ship like an iron anchor. The fear of retribution from their king, Xerxes, loomed over them, a specter that deepened their despair. The glory of Persia felt like a distant dream, slipping further away with every passing moment. Each man felt the sting of defeat differently. Young Darius, barely old enough to bear the weight of a sword, stood on the deck, his shoulders hunched as he stared at the water lapping against the hull. He had believed in their cause, had dreamt of honor and glory. Now all that remained was the bitter taste of failure. He imagined the tales that would be spun back home, stories of how the Persian fleet had been vanquished by a coalition of mere city-states. The shame was a shackle around his heart, an unbearable burden for one so young. Meanwhile, seasoned warriors like Attar, who had sailed the Persian seas for decades, felt the sting of betrayal from those they had once called allies. The Greeks had turned their backs on them, and the pride of their homeland felt like a cruel joke. "How could we let this happen?" he muttered under his breath, fists clenched, as waves crashed against the hull and echoed his frustration. The camaraderie that had once knitted them together now frayed as suspicion crept into their ranks and brothers-in-arms turned into potential traitors. Each day the atmosphere grew thicker, suffocating them with guilt and regret. Kersasp tried to rally them, to ignite a flicker of hope in their hearts, but his voice fell flat against the weight of despair. "We are still Persian. We still have strength. We will rise from this." But his words felt like whispers in a storm, drowned out by the tides of despair that swept through the crew. Their eyes, once fierce with determination, now stared blankly at a future that seemed shrouded in darkness. In moments of solitude, Kersasp would sit at the edge of the deck, his thoughts swirling like the turbulent waters below. He could see their faces, the young and the old, the brave and the weary, all grappling with the shadows of defeat that crept into their minds. He remembered the stories passed down through generations, tales of heroes who had fought valiantly for their king, their homeland. Now those tales felt like hollow echoes, fading into memory as the reality of their situation loomed larger. And then came the rumors, the whispers of Xerxes' fury and the fear of what awaited them upon their return. The once great king, whose very presence had commanded loyalty, now felt like a distant figure shrouded in the mists of anger and betrayal. Would he blame them for the loss? Would he view them as traitors rather than warriors who had fought valiantly against the odds? The questions hung heavy in the air, each one a dagger that pierced their already wounded morale. Storm clouds gathered, mirroring the turmoil within the hearts of the men. Kersasp could feel the storm brewing, not just in the sky but among his crew. The loss of their naval command had shattered not just their fleet but their very souls. Confidence waned, unity faltered, and the thought of home became a bittersweet reminder of what had been lost. As night fell and darkness cloaked the deck, Kersasp gathered the men for one last stand. The flickering light of torches danced in their weary eyes, and he saw a flicker of something. Fear, yes, but also the smallest glimmer of hope. "We will not be defined by this defeat. We fought bravely, and we will fight again." But the echoes of his words seemed to fade into the shadows, swallowed by the vastness of the sea that had turned against them. The waves crashed against the ship with renewed intensity, as if the ocean itself mourned the loss of the Persian naval command. Morale hung by a thread, thin and fragile, swaying in the winds of uncertainty. Each man contemplated the weight of defeat, the fear of the unknown that lay ahead. Who would stand beside them? Who would lift them from this abyss? As the night deepened, the air grew heavy with anticipation. The sea whispered secrets, tales of valor and destruction, beckoning them closer to an uncertain fate. The loss of command had left a scar on their hearts, and in that scar lay the question: what would they become if they could not reclaim their honor? And as they stood together, adrift in a sea of despair, the tension hung thick. A storm brewing on the horizon, a storm that would either break them or forge them anew. The fate of Persia rested not just on the waters of the Aegean, but on the fragile spirits of men who dreamed of glory, but now faced the haunting specter of failure. The battlefield lay silent, but for the faint echo of distant cries that hung in the air like a haunting melody. The ground, once vibrant with life, was now a patchwork of mud and blood, each footstep a reminder of the ferocity that had taken place. Smoke curled lazily from the remnants of burned wagons, mingling with the acrid scent of gunpowder, creating an atmosphere heavy with loss and devastation. It was a sight that would sear itself into the memories of those who survived, the landscape transformed into a grotesque tapestry of despair. As the sun began its slow descent, casting an orange glow over the remnants of the battlefield, a group of soldiers staggered through the wreckage. Their faces, once filled with pride and purpose, were now drawn and haunted. Each step was a struggle, not just against the physical toll of battle, but against the emotional weight that pressed down on their hearts. They had fought valiantly, but the cost was too high, too unbearable. The cries for help echoed like specters around them, reminding them of friends lost, dreams shattered, and lives irrevocably changed. Nearby, a soldier knelt beside the lifeless body of a comrade, tears streaking through the dirt on his cheeks. He cradled the man's head, whispering words of comfort that would never reach the ears of the departed. Memories flooded his mind, laughter shared over campfires, dreams of a future that now lay buried beneath the soil. The pain was an unbearable knot in his chest, tightening with each passing moment as reality settled in. He was not just mourning the loss of a friend, he was mourning a part of himself that would never return. Across the field, the remnants of artillery lay strewn about like discarded toys, silent witnesses to the chaos that had unfolded. The once mighty cannons, capable of unleashing fury, now stood as broken giants, rusting under the weight of time and memory. Nearby, a group of medics worked tirelessly, their hands stained with blood, desperately trying to save those who still clung to life. Every gasp for breath, every cry of agony echoed in the stillness, a chilling reminder that the battle was far from over for many. Among the wounded, a young woman, a nurse who had volunteered to aid the soldiers, moved swiftly from one cot to another. Her heart raced each time she approached a new patient, praying for strength as she faced the horror of their injuries. The cries of pain cut through her like arrows, piercing her resolve. She had seen so much suffering that her heart felt like an old book, pages worn and frayed, each one telling a story of loss. Yet she refused to turn away. She refused to let despair win. Each life she touched was a flicker of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light could still seep through. As darkness settled over the battlefield, the full extent of the destruction became painfully clear. Soldiers and civilians alike were trapped in a nightmare that had no end. Families waiting at home for news of loved ones could only imagine the horrors unfolding. Letters that would never be sent, promises that would never be kept, hung heavy in the air like unfulfilled dreams. The silence of their grief echoed louder than any gunfire. In this aftermath, the scent of burnt wood intertwined with the bitterness of loss, creating a chilling aroma that would linger for years to come. It permeated the very soil where brothers in arms had once stood shoulder to shoulder, fighting for a cause they believed in. Now they lay scattered, dreams extinguished, their stories intertwined with the fate of a nation. A distant howl of wolves filled the night, a reminder that nature continued, indifferent to human suffering. The stars glimmered overhead, distant and cold, as if mocking the chaos below. It was a stark contrast to the warm camaraderie that once filled these grounds. Each twinkle bore witness to the stories of those who had come and gone, their sacrifices etched into the very fabric of time. The hours crawled forward, and with each passing moment, the weight of grief deepened. The soldiers who had fought so bravely now faced a new battle, the battle of survival. They would have to reckon with the memories that would haunt them and the scars that would never fade. Some would return home, but they would never be the same. Others would remain, lost to the earth, their stories forever silenced. A gentle breeze swept across the field, carrying with it the sense of earth and decay, mingling with the whispers of the fallen. It was as if the very ground was mourning, absorbing the sorrow and the blood that had soaked into its skin. The air crackled with tension, thick with unanswered questions and unfulfilled promises. The echoes of laughter and camaraderie felt like ghosts, haunting the spaces where joy once thrived. And yet, amidst the devastation, there was a flicker of resilience. A young soldier, his uniform tattered and worn, rose from the ashes of despair. He surveyed the chaos around him, his heart pounding not just from fear, but from a newfound determination. He would not allow the sacrifices of his brothers to be in vain. He vowed to honor them, to carry their memories into the future, igniting a fire within others to ensure that such pain would never be forgotten. With each step forward, he became a living testament to their bravery. As the night deepened, shadows loomed large, yet the spark of hope began to flicker in the hearts of those who remained. They had witnessed horrors that would never leave them, but they also understood the power of unity, of standing together. The aftershocks of the battle rippled through their souls, igniting a fierce resolve to rebuild, to remember, and to honor the lives lost amidst the destruction. The ground would heal, the scars would fade, but the stories would remain alive, woven into the very fabric of history. And as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, illuminating the remnants of the battlefield, a new chapter awaited, one that would be written in the hearts of those who survived, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unyielding hope that, despite the darkness, they would rise again. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the city of Athens. The air buzzed with anticipation, a palpable energy that made every heart race. The day was not just another day, it was a moment in history, a turning point that would ripple through time. The Battle of Salamis had been fought, and victory belonged to the Hellenic forces. The very thought sent shivers down the spines of citizens, warriors, and poets alike. As the news of their triumph spread, a sense of elation swept through the streets like wildfire. Heroes returned, their faces marked with the dust of battle and their spirits ignited by the joy of survival. Each warrior bore not just a sword and shield, but also the weight of 1,000 dreams. Dreams of freedom, of culture, and of identity. Women, children, and the elderly poured into the streets, their faces glowing with hope and pride. They had watched their men go to war, anxious, praying silently for their return, and now, against all odds, they were back. Triumphal processions filled the streets, a tapestry of color and sound. Crowds gathered, their voices rising in jubilant song, echoing off the marble columns of the Acropolis. Musicians played lyres and flutes, weaving melodies that intertwined with the laughter of children and the cheers of grateful citizens. This was not merely a celebration, it was a communal exhalation, a release of the tension that had gripped their hearts through the long, dark days of conflict. Wreaths of olive leaves adorned the heroes, not just as a symbol of victory, but as a reminder of peace and resilience. Athenians cried out the names of their leaders, Themistocles, who had crafted their naval strategy, and the courageous sailors whose bravery had turned the tide. They were no longer just men, they had become legends, woven into the very fabric of Athenian identity. The streets bore witness to their stories, stories that would echo in the amphitheaters for generations to come. But behind the laughter and the music lay an undercurrent of something deeper. The victory at Salamis was not just a military success, it was a cultural renaissance. Artists began to paint, capturing the essence of the battle and the spirit of the people. Poets composed verses that immortalized the day, each word laden with emotion. The epic tales of bravery and sacrifice ignited imaginations, and soon the whole of Greece would feel the pulse of this cultural revival. Temples, once mere structures of stone, became sanctuaries of gratitude. People flocked to honor the gods, acknowledging that their favor had played a role in the triumph. Offerings of food, wine, and precious items were given, a sign of thanks, but also a plea for continued protection. The connection between the divine and the mortal grew ever stronger, binding the community in shared beliefs and aspirations. As the night deepened, torches flickered to life, illuminating faces filled with emotion. All of Athens seemed to pulse with a singular heartbeat, a collective joy that seemed almost infectious. In this moment, all divisions faded. The wealthy and the poor, the noble and the commoner, danced together under the stars, united in their shared victory. They sang songs of freedom, of the sea, and of a future unshackled by tyranny. But even as the euphoria surged, shadows lingered at the edges of their celebration. Surrounding city-states looked on with a mix of admiration and envy. The tales of Salamis were spreading, taking root in other lands, igniting passions and aspirations. The world was watching, gauging how this victory would shape the landscape of power and culture in the years to come. Would Athens rise as a beacon of democracy and art, or would the flames of jealousy stoke the fires of conflict anew? In the midst of the celebration, a young playwright stood on the outskirts, a quill in hand, feverishly scribbling down the unfolding events. With every stroke, he captured the raw emotion of the moment, the laughter, the tears, the unrelenting hope. His heart raced as he envisioned how his work would resonate with audiences, how it would shape the stories that would be told over and over again. He was part of this cultural revolution, and he felt the weight of history resting on his shoulders. The future was unwritten, and he yearned to give it life through his words. As days turned into weeks, the impact of Salamis wove itself into the very essence of Athenian life. Schools flourished, teaching not only the arts of war, but also philosophy and rhetoric. The streets buzzed with discussions, debates, and ideas that flowed like the wine at their feasts. citizens began to see themselves not just as subjects of a city-state, but as partakers in a grand narrative, the narrative of humanity's struggle for freedom and expression. Artisans crafted exquisite pottery, adorned with scenes of the battle, each vessel telling its own story. And these pieces found their way into homes, spreading the tales of bravery and unity. The city became a canvas, vibrant with colors and life, reflecting the spirit of its people who had faced the abyss and emerged victorious. Yet, even amid the triumph, the reality of war lay heavy in the air. Families mourned the loss of loved ones who had not returned, their absence a stark reminder of the price paid for freedom. The stories of those who had fallen were woven into the fabric of celebration, a bittersweet reminder that every victory carries with it the echoes of sacrifice. Grief mingled with joy, a poignant reminder of the fragility of life. In the shadows of the agora, discussions were sparked about what it meant to be Athenian. The victory had ignited self-reflection. Citizens began to ponder their roles in the community. Would they continue to celebrate the glory of war, or would they channel this energy into something more profound, something that would live beyond the battlefield? Questions hung in the air, unanswered yet urgent, as the city breathed in the aftermath of triumph. The legacy of Salamis began to stretch far beyond its immediate effects. Philosophers penned treatises on democracy, exploring the nature of power and the responsibility that came with it. The night skies sparkled with the same stars that had watched over their ancestors, while the winds whispered tales of resilience and unity. The impact of victory forged a new path, one that would lead the world toward a new understanding of civilization, a culture steeped in the belief that freedom was not a gift, but a right worth fighting for. And as the celebrations continued, the heart of Athens beat stronger, ready to face whatever challenges may come next, fortified by the bonds of community, culture, and the enduring spirit of victory. Each sunrise heralded a new day, a new chapter in their story, as the echoes of Salamis resonated through time, promising that the spirit of that moment would never fade. The sun hung low over the Aegean Sea, casting shimmering reflections that danced like spirits upon the waves. In the air, the scent of salt mixed with the anticipation of battle. The year was 480 BCE, and the fate of Greece teetered on the edge of a knife. Thousands of soldiers stood ready, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and courage, voices rising to the heavens in fervent prayers. This was not just another battle, this was a clash of civilizations. The mighty Persian Empire, led by the ruthless King Xerxes, had come, and the Greeks would either rise or fall in the waters off Salamis. As the sun dipped lower, shadows stretched long across the deck of Athenian triremes, sleek vessels designed for speed and agility. Each ship was a symbol of hope and resistance. Among the crew, a palpable tension buzzed through the air. The fate of their families, their cities, and their very existence lay in the balance. The Greeks were outnumbered, but they were not outmatched in spirit. The Athenians, led by Themistocles, felt a burning desire to defend their homeland. They sensed that this battle would be more than just a fight for survival. It would be a pivotal moment that could shape the future of Greece. As the Persian fleet approached, its ships stretching across the horizon like a dark storm cloud, the Greeks huddled together, whispering stories of valor and bravery. They spoke of their ancestors who fought against tyranny, igniting a flicker of defiance in each heart. The history of Greece was rich with tales of heroism. Now they had to write their own. Themistocles, with his piercing gaze, rallied his men. "We fight not just for our city, but for the freedom of all Greece." His voice rang out, sharp and clear, slicing through the fear that threatened to engulf them. The air crackled with tension as the first clash erupted. Persian ships, heavy and cumbersome, surged forward, their oars slicing through the water. In contrast, the Athenian vessels danced around them, moving with a grace that revealed their training and resolve. The first encounter was brutal, and the sound of wood splintering and men screaming shattered the tranquility of the sea. The Greeks fought with a fervor born of desperation and determination, refusing to let fear dictate their fate. Amidst the chaos, the tides of battle shifted. Themistocles, ever the strategist, had anticipated the Persian moves. He had drawn them into the narrow straits of Salamis, where their numbers counted for little. Here, the Persians found themselves trapped, their colossal ships unable to maneuver, while the nimble Athenian triremes exploited every weakness. The roar of battle became a symphony of clashing metal and the cries of the fallen echoing across the water as history was forged in the flames of conflict. With each passing moment, the tide turned further. Athenian sailors fought like lions, their backs against the walls of their beloved city. They became the embodiment of the idea of freedom, fighting not just for their own lives, but for the very essence of what it meant to be Greek. The cries of victory rang in their ears, each triumph igniting their spirits higher. As the Greeks gained ground, The fear that had once gripped their hearts transformed into unyielding strength, but beneath the exhilaration, shadows of doubt still loomed. Each man and woman carried the weight of the unknown, the fate of their families, and the future of their civilization. They thought of their loved ones, waiting anxiously for news, praying that their warriors would return. It was not just a battle, it was a fight for everything they held dear. The anguish of those thoughts fueled their fire, driving them to push harder, fight longer, and sacrifice everything. Then came the moment that would echo through the annals of history. The Persian flagship, a magnificent vessel that had once inspired awe, found itself surrounded. The Athenian forces closed in, their triremes like a pack of wolves circling their prey. The fearsome crew on board, once confident of their victory, now faced the grim reality of their defeat. As arrows arced through the air and the crash of ships reverberated, the cries of the Persian soldiers were swallowed by the roar of the Aegean. The tide of history shifted irrevocably, and in that moment of triumph, the Greeks felt an indescribable rush. Victory tasted sweet against the bitterness of uncertainty. They had faced a titan and stood firm, not just for themselves, but for the countless generations yet to come. The Battle of Salamis was more than a mere victory. It marked the dawn of a new era. The Greeks had not only defended their land, they had ignited a flame of courage that would inspire future generations to rise against oppression. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow over the battered waves, the clash of swords and shields faded into silence. The sea, once a battlefield, now lay calm, cradling the memories of bravery and sacrifice. There, in the aftermath of victory, hope blossomed. The Greeks had emerged as defenders of freedom, setting a precedent that would resonate throughout history. The spirit of Salamis would become an eternal symbol of defiance against tyranny, lighting the path for all those who yearned for liberty. The atmosphere was thick with emotion, tears mingled with sweat, and the Greek warriors embraced one another, their hearts swelling with pride. They were not just soldiers, they were guardians of a legacy that would echo in the hearts of their descendants. They could almost hear the voices of those who had come before them, whispering tales of honor, courage, and the relentless fight for freedom. Yet, as the dusk settled over Salamis, a sense of foreboding lingered. The Persians may have been defeated, but the shadow of war loomed on the horizon. The struggle for Greece was far from over, and battles lay ahead that would test the mettle of these newfound heroes. The fight for freedom was a path fraught with challenges, yet the victory at Salamis had ignited a fire within. It was a fire that could not be extinguished, a beacon promising that the spirit of Greece would rise again, ready to face whatever came next. And as the waves continued to lap against the shores of Salamis, the world held its breath, poised for the unfolding story of a people who dared to dream of freedom, driven by the pulse of history and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. The air was thick with smoke and uncertainty, a chaos that danced around the battlefield, wrapping around men like a heavy, suffocating blanket. The sounds of swords clashing and the anguished cries of wounded soldiers echoed through the valley as the clash of ideologies reached a fever pitch. This was not just a fight for territory, it was a struggle for something deeper, something that pulsed with the very essence of humanity, freedom. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the frantic skirmishes, it seemed as though time stood still. Soldiers, tired yet fierce, charged forward, driven by an unshakable belief in their cause, their hearts pounding with a rhythm that echoed the collective heartbeat of a people yearning to break free. Each clash of steel was not merely a sound, it was a declaration, a cry for liberation that resonated far beyond the immediate chaos. In the swirling dust, the flag, tattered but proudly waving, became a beacon of hope. It was not just a piece of cloth, it symbolized the dreams, sacrifices, and aspirations of countless souls. With every fluttering movement, it spoke of resilience, of defiance against oppression. For the soldiers, it was a reminder of why they fought, a dream of a land where children could run freely, where voices could rise without fear, and where the shackles of tyranny could be shattered. As night fell, the battlefield transformed into a haunting silhouette of despair and determination. The air felt electric, charged with the cries of the fallen. Each soldier carried within him not only his own fears and dreams, but the weight of a nation yearning for expression. The symbols of freedom were carved into the hearts of those who stood their ground, reminding them of the countless generations that had fought and died for a future they might never see. Amidst the carnage, the eyes of a young soldier filled with a mix of dread and hope locked onto the distant horizon. He thought of his family, of the life that lay beyond this nightmare. The thought of his younger sister, laughing in the sunlight, pulled him through the haze of battle. He imagined her playing without a care in the world, her laughter like music rising above the din of war. Each memory fueled his spirit, it ignited a fire within him. Freedom wasn't just a word, it was a promise that he would fight for, bleed for, and if necessary, die for. With each passing moment, the battle intensified, a swirling storm of emotion and conflict. The symbolism of their struggle became palpable, as if the very ground they stood upon was infused with the dreams and aspirations of those who had come before. The cries of the wounded mingled with the battle cries, crafting a haunting symphony that resonated with the weight of history. It was a reminder that this was not merely a fight for survival, it was a fight for identity, for a legacy that would echo through time. Every fallen soldier became a symbol, a martyr in the grand tapestry of freedom. Their sacrifices did not fade away, instead they transformed into stories that would inspire future generations. Each life lost whispered tales of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. As the night wore on, the battle raged, but amidst the chaos, a sense of unity emerged. These men, once strangers, were now brothers in arms, bound by a shared purpose that transcended their individual fears. In a moment of pause, the young soldier knelt beside a comrade, their eyes meeting in a fleeting acknowledgement of shared dreams and shared pain. They spoke without words, their hearts intertwined in the silent understanding that they were fighting not just for themselves, but for an entire generation. The fire of determination surged within them, igniting a fierce resolve that pulsed through the lines like a heartbeat. Thunderous cannons roared, shattering the night, and the battlefield erupted once more in a clash of wills. The air crackled with emotion, the stakes higher than ever. The symbols of freedom became even more profound in that moment, transforming the battlefield into a hallowed ground where dreams collided with harsh reality. Each clash of swords echoed the struggles of the past, reverberating through time, connecting men from different walks of life in a singular mission. And there it was, the moment when all seemed lost, when despair threatened to snuff out the flickering flame of hope. But then a rallying cry pierced the darkness, rising above the tumult. "For freedom!" The words, simple yet powerful, surged through the ranks, igniting a wildfire of determination. The soldiers, united in purpose, charged forward, propelled by the weight of history and the promise of a brighter future. Suddenly, the flag was at the forefront, lifted high above the chaos, catching the fading light as though it had a life of its own. It was a symbol that transcended the battlefield, a testament to sacrifice, a rallying point for the weary and the brave alike. As it waved, it seemed to weave through the air, stitching together the hopes and dreams of those who dared to envision a world unshackled by oppression. The fight raged on, each moment more intense than the last. As the soldiers pushed through the haze of exhaustion and fear, the messages of freedom tattooed their souls, merging their identities with the very essence of what they were fighting for. With every victory and every loss, the battlefield became a canvas, painting a story of struggle, courage, and the relentless pursuit of liberty. In the heart of the conflict, amidst the cacophony of war, the essence of humanity shone through like a beacon. This battle was not just about land or power, it was a visceral fight for the very spirit of freedom itself. A fire that refused to be extinguished. As the battle continued to unfold, every clash, every cry, and every triumphant cheer resonated with the promise that echoed through history, the unwavering belief that freedom is worth every sacrifice, every moment of hardship, and every ounce of courage. With the dawn still an echo away, the stage was set for an even greater clash, not just of arms, but of ideals, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who dared to dream of a world forever changed. The battle had only just begun. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow over the Aegean Sea, where waves lapped against the hulls of ships. A moment of stillness settled over the waters, as if nature itself was holding its breath. On that fateful day in 480 BCE, the stage was set for a confrontation that would echo through history, whispering lessons to future generations about courage, strategy, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. The Persian fleet, vast and imposing, stretched as far as the eye could see. Each ship, a testament to the might of an empire that spanned continents, glided through the water like shadows of death. The sound of oars dipping into the sea resonated ominously. Yet, amidst this overwhelming force stood the Greek triremes, their sleek hulls cutting through the waves with a grace that belied their lethal purpose. Men aboard these vessels, filled with resolve, understood that this battle would not merely decide the fate of a city or a nation, it would alter the very fabric of warfare itself. As the two fleets drew closer, tension crackled like a thunderstorm ready to unleash its fury. The Greeks, led by Themistocles, knew they were outnumbered, yet their hearts beat with the rhythm of hope. They had a plan, a daring strategy strategy that would turn the tide in their favor. With every breath, they prepared to fight not just for their lives, but for the freedom of their city-states and the very ideals they cherished. It was a gamble, and the stakes could not have been higher. The first clash erupted with a roar that shattered the silence, a cacophony of splintering wood and the screams of men. The Greeks, using their knowledge of the narrow straits of Salamis, maneuvered their triremes with speed and precision, ramming into the Persian vessels with a ferocity that sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks. The tide of battle swelled and receded, just as the waves crashed against the shore, each surge bringing both hope and despair. In that moment, something profound began to unfold. The Persian navy, with its sheer size, found itself trapped in a deadly embrace, unable to unleash its full might. The Greeks, small yet agile, darted in and out, striking with the ferocity of lions. There was a beauty in their desperation, a harmony in the chaos as they fought for survival. Every warrior on those ships felt the weight of history pressing down on their shoulders, and amid the clash of swords and the cries of the wounded, they found a fierce determination deep within their souls. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, the battle reached its climax. The Greeks, fueled by their unity and unyielding spirit, pushed forward with a collective roar. They were not just fighting for their city, they were fighting for a future where freedom could flourish, a future that would ripple across time and space. The cries of the fallen echoed alongside the cheers of the victors, a haunting reminder of the price one pays for liberty. When the dust settled, the Greeks emerged battered but victorious. The Persian fleet lay in ruins, a testament to the power of strategy over size, of determination over despair. The influence of this battle would resonate through the ages, planting seeds of tactical innovation that would bloom in future conflicts. From this day forward, the world would understand that warfare was not solely about strength in numbers. It was about the will to fight, the courage to adapt, and the wisdom to exploit the battlefield's geography. In the aftermath, the echoes of Salamis would reach far and wide. Military leaders, scholars, and strategists throughout the ages would study the battle, understanding its implications for years to come. The lessons learned here would shape naval tactics, inspire innovations in ship design, and redefine the principles of engagement. The ancient world would witness a shift, a new understanding of warfare that emphasized agility and cunning over brute force. And so the waters of the Aegean continued to lap against the shores, carrying with them whispers of strategy, heroism, and the enduring struggle for freedom. Empires would rise and fall, battles would be fought and won, but the influence of Salamis would forever resonate in the hearts of those who dared to dream of a better world. Each subsequent clash upon the seas would be colored by the bold strokes of this moment, a moment where a small fleet of determined warriors turned the tide of history. Men like Themistocles understood that the true essence of warfare lay not just in the clash of weapons, but in the hearts and minds of the warriors themselves. They knew that the legacy of Salamis would serve as a guiding star for future commanders, illuminating paths to victory that would emerge from the shadows of despair. As the lessons of this historic battle traveled through time, they ignited the imaginations of countless leaders, fueling a relentless pursuit of cunning strategies and innovative tactics. The influence of Salamis extended beyond the battlefield, weaving itself into the very fabric of societies that valued freedom and democracy. The ideals fought for that day would inspire revolutions and reformations, shaping the destinies of nations across the globe. The hearts of men and women, ignited by the courage displayed on those fateful waters, would rise up against tyranny, demanding their right to govern themselves. Back on the shores of Greece, where the echoes of the battle still lingered, a new generation grew up inspired by the tales of bravery, the stories of fathers and grandfathers who had faced insurmountable odds and emerged victorious. They learned that true strength lies not in numbers, but in the unshakable spirit of a united people. And as the sun set on their cities, casting long shadows on the streets, they felt a sense of duty to carry forth the lessons of Salamis into their future. And so the influence of that moment would ripple through time, igniting passions and ambitions for generations to come. The waves of the Aegean would carry these stories across the seas, ensuring that the spirit of Salamis lived on, ready to inspire the next great battle, the next act of defiance against overwhelming odds. A new chapter waited to be written, and it hung in the air, thick with possibility and the promise of change. The sun hung low in the Athenian sky, casting long shadows over the bustling agora where merchants shouted and children played. Among the throngs, whispers fluttered like the wings of frightened birds. Themistocles, they murmured, a name that hung heavy with both reverence and disdain. For some, he was a hero, a man who had drawn the line against the dark tide of Persia. For others, he was a cunning charlatan with ambitions that choked the very democracy he professed to love. In this city of marble and ambition, the legacy of Themistocles breathed life into both pride and unease. As the winds shifted, so did the fortunes of Themistocles. He stood at the helm of a growing naval power, his vision piercing through the fog of complacency. "Build the triremes," he had urged, his voice ringing like a clarion call. The Athenian assembly, filled with skepticism, looked upon him with narrowed eyes. Yet one by one they fell under the spell of his conviction. They forged ships that sliced through the waves, ironclad proof of his brilliance. Yet in those very victories lay the seeds of a darker story. The Battle of Salamis became a moment etched into the soul of Greece. On that fateful day, the sun bore witness to a clash of empires, Persians with their insatiable hunger for conquest, and Athenians emboldened by the fire of freedom. Themistocles, ever the strategist, had played his cards well. Deceit wrapped in ingenuity, he sent a message to Xerxes, luring the Persian king into a trap that would shape history. As the Persian ships found themselves ensnared in the narrow straits, the tides of war turned, but not without a price. Was it victory or betrayal? The smoke of burning vessels mingled with the cries of the fallen, and in that chaos, heroes and villains wore the same mask. Yet, the triumph of Salamis was but a temporary balm for Themistocles' restless spirit. His ambition knew no bounds. The accolades of the city turned sweet as honey, but felt like chains around his soul. For in the golden halls of Athens, whispers grew louder and shadows lengthened. "What does he want?" the people began to ask, their voices tinged with suspicion. "Is it power or is it glory?" A once celebrated hero found himself standing alone, grappling with the weight of his own desire. As the years passed, the winds shifted yet again. Themistocles, once a beloved son of Athens, became a figure of controversy. The very city he saved began to see him as a threat. A man who had fought for democracy now seemed to flirt with tyranny, and the same assembly that praised him turned its back with chilling resolve. They cast him out, a specter of his former self, and he was forced to flee, a broken man in a foreign land. What had begun as a quest for unity had spiraled into his own downfall. Did he not fight for them? Did he not bleed for them? The question echoed in his mind as he wandered through the streets of exile, a poignant reminder that even the brightest stars can be swallowed by the darkness. As Themistocles settled into the courts of Persia, he became a ghost of his former self, the once radiant leader, now just a pawn in a more significant game. Yet even in this twilight he wielded his intellect like a sword, whispering strategies to Xerxes and earning his keep. But beneath the surface, turmoil raged. The man who had once stood boldly at the helm of Athenian ships now found himself trapped in a web of his own making. Would history remember him as a patriot or a traitor? The question haunted him like a specter in the night, but fate had its own twists. Themistocles, in his cunning, orchestrated a plan to make his way back to Greece, his home. He reached out to those he once called friends, those who had once cheered his name. Yet, as he approached the shores of his homeland, the winds whispered warnings. Would they welcome him back with open arms, or would they see him as a harbinger of doom? As his ship crossed the threshold into familiar waters, tension crackled in the air like lightning. The citizens of Athens gathered at the harbor, their faces a tumult of emotions, confusion, anger, longing. Themistocles stepped onto the land he had fought to protect, his heart racing as he scanned the faces of the crowd. There stood his once adoring allies, now tinged with doubt. Would they embrace him as a hero or cast him aside as a villain? The silence was deafening, every heartbeat echoing the uncertainty that lay ahead. In that moment, the weight of his legacy hung precariously in the balance. Themistocles had played the game of politics, and like all games, it had its rules: deceit, loyalty, love, and betrayal. He had fought not just for his city, but for a vision of greatness that few could comprehend. And yet, as he stood at the precipice of acceptance or judgment, he realized that the very legacy he built was a double-edged sword. Would history remember Themistocles as the man who saved Athens? Or would it reflect on the shadows that danced behind his brilliance? As the sun set on the horizon, the city waited with bated breath for his next move, the question lingering like a ghost in the air. What kind of hero would he choose to be? What kind of villain lay hidden beneath his skin? As the evening deepened, the echoes of ancient battles and lost friendships reverberated through the streets. Themistocles took a step forward, feeling the weight of countless hopes and fears pressing down upon him. The choice lay before him like an open sea, turbulent and vast, with no clear path. But one thing was certain: the tale of Themistocles was far from over. And the legacy of a hero or villain would continue to unfold, leaving an indelible mark on the pages of history. The sun hung low over the Aegean Sea, casting a golden hue across the waters that shimmered like a vast blanket of jewels. Sailboats bobbed gently on the waves, but beneath the surface a storm brewed, not of nature, but of ambition, fear, and the clash of two mighty civilizations. It was here, in this seemingly serene setting, that destinies would collide and history would be forever altered. The air was thick with tension as the Greek fleet gathered near the island of Salamis. The Persians, with their vast numbers and fearsome reputation, loomed like a dark shadow on the horizon. King Xerxes had commanded a fleet that was said to be as numerous as the stars, a force that struck terror into the hearts of many. But the Greeks, unified for once in their shared struggle, refused to be cowed. Their hearts beat with defiance, courage igniting within them like flames in the night. The Athenian general Themistocles stood at the prow of his ship, eyes narrowed against the glimmering sun. He could feel the pulse of his people, their hopes and fears reflected in the waves lapping against the hull. Themistocles knew that the fate of Greece rested on his shoulders. As he scanned the horizon, he sensed the weight of history pressing down on him. Victory or defeat would echo through the ages, shaping tales told by future generations. The day of battle arrived with the dawn, a chilling prelude to the chaos that was about to unfold. In the distance, the Persian fleet began to emerge from the mists, their ships lined up like a wall of iron. The Greeks, though outnumbered, had a secret weapon. The Straits of Salamis, narrow and constricting, would play to their advantage. A plan was set in motion. Whispers of strategy carried on the sea breeze. Themistocles had devised a scheme, one that would lure the Persian forces into a trap, and now it was time to set it into action. As the first clash of ships echoed across the water, the tension was palpable. The Greeks surged forward, their vessels nimble and quick, while the massive Persian ships struggled to maneuver in the confined space. The air crackled with the sound of oars slicing through water and the shouts of warriors as they fought with everything they had. Each clash of wood against wood reverberated like thunder, a sound that foretold the birth of legends. The battle raged ferociously, and with each moment the stakes grew higher. Themistocles fought not just for survival, but for the very essence of freedom. He could see the fierce determination in the eyes of his men, a reflection of the resolve that had ignited their spirits. They were not just defending their homeland, they were defending their way of life, their beliefs, and their very identities. Amidst the chaos, a Persian ship collided with a Greek vessel, sending splinters flying like deadly shrapnel. The sailors, faces twisted in determination, fought with a ferocity born from desperation. The Greeks, though fewer in number, danced across the waves with a grace that belied their fierce intent. They struck again and again, exploiting the narrow straits, turning the tide bit by bit. As the sun rose higher, bathing the battlefield in a brutal light, the tide of battle shifted. The Persian fleet began to falter, their numbers dwindling as the Greek ships darted in and out like fireflies, quick and deadly. The sea, once a tranquil expanse, became a tempest of chaos. Sailors shouted, swords clashed, and the cries of the wounded filled the air, a haunting melody of struggle and bravery. In the midst of this turmoil, a singular moment crystallized like a gem in the chaos. A Greek ship, with its flag fluttering defiantly in the wind, rammed into the side of a Persian vessel. The impact was catastrophic. The ship splintered, and with it the morale of the Persian fleet began to crack. The tides of fate were shifting, and everyone could feel it. Xerxes, watching from the shore, felt a chill run through him as he witnessed his fleet being dismantled piece by piece. His dreams of conquest, grand and sweeping, were disintegrating before his very eyes. But he had underestimated the spirit of the Greeks, their willingness to fight for every inch of their beloved land. The world was changing, and amidst this storm of battle, every soul present could sense it. The battle wore on, and as dusk fell, the waters of Salamis were turned crimson, a poignant reminder of the cost of war. The Greeks stood resolute, their unity a powerful force against the onslaught of the Persian might. Themistocles, amid the cacophony of battle, understood that this was more than a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future. A future where freedom and democracy could flourish, where the ideals of the city-state would not be extinguished by tyranny. As the last echoes of combat filled the air and the smoke began to clear, the Greeks emerged victorious, but the cost was steep. They had faced the abyss and returned, forever changed. The island of Salamis would be etched in their hearts and in the annals of history. It was not just a battle won, it was a symbol of resistance against oppression, a beacon of hope for generations to come. Yet, even in victory, the weight of what was to come hung heavy. The Greeks knew that the war was far from over. The shadows of the Persian Empire still loomed, and the struggle for freedom would continue. But for now, In this moment of triumph, they drew strength from one another, their spirits intertwined like the waves that lapped against the shore, ever persistent, ever hopeful. And as the night descended, the stars began to twinkle above the waters of Salamis, each one a silent witness to the bravery and sacrifice of those who had fought. The story was far from finished, for the tides of war were relentless, and the next chapter awaited just beyond the horizon. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an amber glow across the shimmering waves of the Aegean Sea. A cool breeze whispered through the olive trees lining the shore, barely stirring the silence that enveloped the land. It was the same sea where the fate of nations had once hung in the balance, where the clash of swords and the roar of men echoed across history. The Battle of Salamis had taken place here, a defining moment that would shape the course of freedom for generations to come. In the autumn of 480 BC, the Greek city-states faced their greatest challenge. The Persian Empire, with its vast armies and ambitions of conquest, threatened to extinguish the flickering flame of independence that burned in the hearts of the Greeks. The air was thick with tension, fear, and determination as the Persian fleet, commanded by King Xerxes, advanced toward the narrow straits of Salamis, where the Greeks waited with bated breath. The Athenian general Themistocles, a man of vision and cunning, stood on the rocky outcrop overlooking the sea, his heart pounding with a mix of dread and fierce resolve. He understood that their only hope lay not in sheer numbers, but in strategy, in the very nature of their terrain. It was a gamble, a daring play against an empire that seemed unstoppable. His thoughts swirled with the weight of responsibility, the lives of thousands resting upon his decisions. Even as the Persian ships glided ominously closer, with their ornate figureheads glinting in the sun, something stirred within the hearts of the Greek warriors. Every man knew the stakes, and with each breath, a quiet fire ignited. The desire for freedom, for home, for the right to live without tyranny. The promise of their ancestors echoed through the ranks, reminding them that they were not just fighting for themselves, but for every generation that would follow. As night fell, the Greeks gathered on the shores, the flickering flames of campfires casting shadows over furrowed brows and steely gazes. Their voices rose in a chorus of unity, a hymn of hope and defiance that rattled the very stars above. Each man felt it, an unbreakable bond that formed in the face of adversity. The laughter, the stories shared, were an antidote to fear, a reminder that they were not alone in this fight. The dawn broke with a sense of foreboding. The Persian ships, massive and intimidating, filled the horizon like a dark storm cloud. But it was within the hearts of the Greek sailors and soldiers that a tempest brewed. Not of fear, but of unyielding courage. As they launched their ships into the fray, the world around them faded into a blur of motion and resolve. The battle began with thunderous roars and the clash of wood against wood. The narrow straits became a labyrinth of chaos. Greek ships, agile and quick, danced through the water, their crews executing maneuvers crafted with precision and desperation. The sound of splintering hulls and the cries of the wounded melded into a haunting symphony of war. With every Persian vessel that sank, the spirit of freedom soared higher. Themistocles, in the thick of it all, felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The cries of his comrades rang in his ears as he navigated through the chaos, his heart alive with purpose. Each swing of a sword was a strike against oppression, each push of the oar a pledge to uphold their right to exist. The moment was electric, crackling with the fervor of their shared dream. As the dust clouded the sun and the battle raged on, the Greeks pressed forward, fueled by a collective memory of their past. They remembered the sacrifices made by those who had come before, the warriors who had fought for the very principles that now guided their hands. It was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the essence of what it meant to be free. With each passing hour, the tide turned. The Persian fleet, once seen as an unstoppable force, began to falter. The Greeks sensed it, the moment when despair shifted to triumph, when the spirit of freedom surged like a tidal wave through their lines. With unyielding resolve, they pressed their advantage, pushing the enemy back, their hearts synchronized in a rhythm of hope and defiance. Then came the moment that would echo through the ages. The Persian fleet, beleaguered and broken, began to retreat, their mighty ships splintering against the rocks and each other. The cheers of the Greeks filled the air, a chorus that rose to the heavens and called upon their ancestors to witness their victory. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered emotion, a burst of joy intermingled with relief, a celebration of their unyielding spirit. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, the Greeks stood victorious, the salty air thick with the scent of freedom. They had fought against the odds and emerged not just as warriors, but as defenders of their way of life. Yet, in the aftermath of valor, a question lingered in the air, heavy with the weight of realization. What does it truly mean to be free? The battle was won, but the struggle continued. Freedom was not merely the absence of chains, it was a choice, a responsibility. The lessons of Salamis were etched into their souls, a reminder that the fight for liberty was a flame that must be tended to, lest it flicker and die. In the years that followed, the echoes of that day would resonate through the annals of history, reminding all who came after of the price of freedom. The legacy of Salamis would become a beacon, a testament to the power of unity, courage, and the indomitable human spirit. As the sun set on the battlefield, the Greeks stood together, not just as victors, but as a symbol of hope for all who yearned for freedom. The waves lapped gently at the shores, the sun dipped low, and somewhere in the distance the first stars began to twinkle, shining brightly over a world forever changed by the echoes of a singular moment in time.